Ontogeny. 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 ontogeny,
How's that? Can you hear me now? Just had to adjust the volume rocker there. In transit, sometimes these things get fiddled around a little bit. All right, excellent. How's the sound level? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? The only person talking in the museum right now, so I'm trying not to be too loud. Don't want to be obnoxious.
Ontogeny.
But sounds good? Excellent. All right, beautiful. Well, good stuff. Good stuff. Welcome, everybody, to Paleontologizing, and welcome to the Badlands Dinosaur Museum in Dickinson, North Dakota. This is a museum that's very near and dear to my heart. My old crew chief, Denver Fowler, is the curator of paleontology here, and in just a couple minutes he's going to be giving us an exclusive tour of the exhibits, and we might even make it into the collections or the lab, too. I'll also be streaming from here tomorrow, so we'll be taking a look at the laboratory in there. We'll be meeting Steve Clausen, who is the fossil preparator, and yeah, we'll be looking at collections and stuff too, looking at some of these really important fossil specimens, some of which are new to science. They are holotypes, which means they are the name-bearing specimen for a new genus or species of critter. Some of them are dinosaurs. And yeah, this is very much a dinosaur museum, and I've been so excited for this because you're going to get to see kind of some cutting-edge things in dinosaur science today. Oh man, I'm excited. Right here we've got this lovely Triceratops skull. So this was actually here long before Denver got hired at the museum. This museum was established in like the earlier mid-1990s, kind of during the Jurassic Park craze here in Dickinson, North Dakota. And it closed for a while, and then it was actually purchased by the city of Dickinson, North Dakota. It's now a municipal museum. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. And, well, here comes Denver. Denver, how's it going? You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Denver Fowler. I am the curator here on the dinosaur side of the museum. And I run the field work and basically organize the lab and collections, things like that as well, with some of my staff who'll be here tomorrow. Yeah,
we're really excited about that. I told them we're going to get to meet Steve and see the work in the lab and everything, so very cool. One of the themes on today's broadcast is just going to be how this might not seem like a very large museum, but it punches well above its weight in terms of field work and research and outreach, and I really think, we're going to hit you over the head with that idea today. You're going to see it firsthand. So yeah, where do you think we should start? Should we start at the front of the museum, or we're the only people in here right now, so we don't have to worry about
make a lot of noise.
Yeah. So yeah, I got the chat on my arm too. That's what this is. If you think it looks weird, Denver, but
you look like a cyborg.
So Denver was my crew chief in the field for, she was like 7 or 8 field seasons.
Something like that.
Yeah, back
about 2010 or 11, maybe.
2011 would have been my first summer in the field. Yeah. I think hopefully our signal's still good over here. I think it is. Yeah. So it says cyborg. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this is the entranceway to the museum over here. There's the gift shop, and we'll be talking about that a bunch. I've actually got one of the gift shop shirts on right now, and you can purchase those if you use the commands in the title. I think it's BDM merch. So those shirts are right over there, and they're good quality. Anyhow, yeah, when you first walk in, this is what you see. This is not going to be what the museum looks like after some renovations that we'll be talking about later.
Right.
Yeah.
You might like the T-Rex cast that we have here. You're probably used to seeing the AMNH skull.
Yeah, 5027.
We have a cast of the Los Angeles skull
Right.
here. There's not that many museums have this particular skull. It's one of the largest T-Rex skulls known. And I think the bit of information that my predecessor put together, this was the 17th cast made from the original, and the 18th and 19th we used in Jurassic Park. So.
So that's the one that's in the visitor center in Jurassic Park.
Well,
it looks kind of snaggled.
Yeah, not the exact same cast, but yes, the same.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other side of it's actually better than this side, because this side, some of it's sculpted. The other side is better, but it's slightly, the lower jaw tilts a little bit different, so I understand why they did that. But this is going to be in our main exhibit reasonably soon.
Very cool.
We're going to put a different exhibit in this space.
Awesome.
So we have with the renovations, we're experimenting with a few different looks in the lobby and what we're going to put in this space.
We have a question already about merchandise. Did they ship to Spain?
I should think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could confirm that with Steph maybe. But, I mean, I've shipped around the world for all sorts of different things, and it just means you'll have to figure out on the program.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Yeah, and I love this sign right here too. You had that commissioned, right?
Yeah, I got an artist in Australia to make that. He was just in high school when he did it. He might have just graduated. I really like his sense of fun. I think it's he's got a particular style that's a good laugh.
Yeah, I like that a lot. This one's good too. Not as paleontologically relevant, but good stuff. Yeah.
Try to be to try and get across the rules without being too forceful. You know?
Yeah, that's important. Just strike the right tone.
Although I've got a bell for when we're doing school groups and people are a bit unruly, I've got like a bell that we can ring, and humans are conditioned to stopping when they hear a bell. I learned this when I was so I thought I got to get a little bell, and it just controls the kids when they get a bit wild. That's a little tip if you're ever dealing with crowds. Just have a little bell in your pocket. It's weird.
You can have that one for free, chat.
Whistles are more authoritative, but a bell is a kind of stop and listen thing.
Yeah. This, I know this specimen well. Oh, man. I helped Liz collect this back in 2017. Yeah, this was... There's actually footage of me in the previously recorded Danny video, like doing some chiseling. That's on this specimen right here. So, yeah, Denver, do you want to talk about this?
Well, we were... this is kind of the story of where our where our Judith River fieldwork came from. That's... we were collecting in the Hell Creek. No, we were collecting. Yeah, we were in the Hell Creek. We were in the Hell Creek. We were getting our permit signed by the BLM, and we went to their office. And in their office was this little jaw with teeth in it.
Right. Yeah.
And it said hadrosaur jaw. And Liz, my wife Liz, who's also a professional professor and professional paleontologist, she said that no, that's not a hadrosaur jaw. That looks ceratopsian. And so we spoke to the BLM and we said, like, well, where's this from? Because it's small and it's nicely preserved. So either it's a small jaw from the Hell Creek, in which case it's a juvenile, really important, or it's from the Judith River, in which case it's a Judith River ceratopsian, it's really important.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next year they took us there. We got out of the truck and they said, it comes from this cliff, but we don't remember where. So we walked towards the cliff, and within like a minute of getting out of the truck, Jack Wilson has found this slab sticking up from the prairie. It looked like a gravestone, and you could see these white bones. That was what we could see. We could see this is the arm of a duckbill, and it was just sticking up like this. And so,
you can see the lichen on the surface.
Yeah.
Like this was,
So the BLM were pretty happy with that, and then shortly after that we found where the ceratopsian was coming out, and we collected some parts of that. But this specimen stayed out there for a whole another year until we had permission to collect it. So we applied for a permit to dig around, and Danny is digging around it in some of the photographs we have online. And we dug down a bit, and we saw that it had the shoulder as well later, and basically we took the arm out. And what's interesting about it is, once we started cleaning this up, we saw these blotches, these little circles on the surface of the bone, and that's skin impressions. And so you can see...
That's so cool.
There's like almost like a glove. There's the brown sort of mottled surface is a skin impression in 3 dimensions of the shape of the hand, then going all the way up the arm. And there probably would have been a little bit up here, but we didn't actually know about it when we were prepping it. So, Liz cleaned this up, and we have this became one of what we call our ambassador specimens. So we made a cast of this, and there's a cast in the BLM office in Glasgow. And then we also took one, and we put it in the science lab of the school in Hinsdale.
Very cool.
Which is the closest town to where we get this from.
Yeah.
So this was our first bit of fossilized skin in the museum. We've collected a few specimens now with skin. This was our first one of 3, I think.
So again, what you're looking at is a hadrosaur arm. So it's the right arm of a duck-billed dinosaur, yeah. And that's the pinky finger right there, which it's not, kind of in this mitten like the rest of the other fingers are. This is the weight-bearing part, and that just kind of sticks out to the side, almost like he's being fancy drinking tea or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice find. The toes have come apart a little bit. What's weird about this, though, is it's got skin. You usually say, when it's got skin, it was very rapidly buried and it was very well preserved. But this is an arm on its own.
Yeah.
Like, we dug around, and there's part of a femur in another block, but this was an arm that was ripped off a carcass and went off floating down the river by itself and got preserved as an arm covered in skin, which is unusual. You might usually expect there to be the arm connected to the body, but this certainly wasn't the case. There's no ribs under there. So somehow the whole arm and shoulder blade got yanked off.
Right.
So maybe it was pulled off by a tyrannosaur or something like that. It's quite hard to imagine how the arm could come away from the body with all the skin attached.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, but I remember when we were digging at this site, again, it was sticking up almost like a gravestone or something, and we were trying to chisel that block off so we could collect it, but we were expecting there to maybe be a whole skeleton just under this big mass of sand. And you said you dug a massive hole and there was just nothing? Just a few other
we went
pieces?
back the next year and we dug all around there with a great big pit. And this has obviously been out for a long time.
Yeah.
But even so, there was nothing. Just that chunky bits of femur in one block.
Yeah. We've got a question. How rare is skin to see?
We used to think skin was really rare. And now what we're realizing is a lot of skin is just really difficult to see or not obvious. So the first trick is that skin is more commonly preserved on the underside. So what you're looking at here is actually the underside of the block. It would have been the other way up when it was originally preserved. But it's on the underside. And some of that makes sense. If you find like a dead animal in a field, often the upper part of the body is all kind of like weathered away, or the sun has got to it. But the underside, you can sometimes find like a dried out skin crust.
Right.
So we've learned to look on the underside of carcasses, skeletons in the field for skin. It isn't always the case, of course. You do get it all over the place, but it is more common on the underside. And the other is that some skin really isn't obvious to the naked eye. It's possible that there's actually a lot more soft tissues present in fossils than we ever realized before. And we're starting to see them by shining different wavelengths of light at them. Ultraviolet is a fairly obvious one, but other wavelengths too. There's colleagues based in Hong Kong who've developed some new techniques for that, and also some colleagues in Chicago who've done something similar. And it creates a new level of chaos when you're cleaning these bones up, because you can't see the soft tissue unless you're using these special lights. And even then, have you got the rock clean across the plane where the soft tissue is preserved? So that it's
really easy to just dig straight through the skin, basically, when you're prepping something like this.
Right. It's an emerging problem that we haven't fully resolved yet. But it's exciting because it means there's lots more of this kind of thing to be seen.
Yeah.
And we've collected 2 more specimens now with skin, quite a lot nicer than this actually.
I love this little graphic right here too. Liz made this, right?
Yes.
Showing the homology between a human arm and then this probably Brachylophosaurus arm.
Yeah, all the diagnostic hadrosaurs that we've had in this area have been Brachylophosaurus. There would have been other hadrosaurs alive at the same time.
Other lambeosaurs, maybe? Or lambeosaurs, not saur-looking?
There may have been lambeosaurs.
Yeah.
But this is probably a little bit older than when we get the first lambeosaurs.
Oh, really?
In North America.
Huh.
Not much older. Maybe 500,000 years, something like that. But anyway, you've also got things like Maiasaur around at this time and Griposaurus around at this time. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that this belongs to them. But all the ones we found that are diagnostic are Brachylophosaurus.
Yeah.
And where this comes from is the Judith River near Glasgow, Montana. And the significance of this is that this was a time when the Western Interior Seaway had flooded the middle of America. And these guys were living out on a delta. This delta stretched all the way from the mountains pretty much way out into the seaway, like hundreds and hundreds of miles. And Brachylophosaurus seems to be the most common dinosaur on this delta. So maybe it was adapted to living on these lush delta plain environments, whereas Maiasaurus seems to be more upland.
Awesome. It's so cool to see a specimen that I had helped collect on display too. That's only happened a few times in my life. And like, there's Yoshi's trike, and then there's some stuff at the Burke Museum. But apart from that, yeah, we'll go see Count Tricula later too.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I'm excited. But it's a really cool display. I love that this is like the first thing that you run up against when you walk into the museum too. It makes me really proud.
Right.
Yeah.
The museum will be changing significantly once we do the expansion. We renovate completely the exhibits. It's going to take a very different approach. Right now, we've got this is still largely the old museum exhibit. We're about 1/3 new stuff. But it's going to be very, very different when we do the new exhibit.
So yeah, so all of the minerals over here, this is all from before your time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Apart from the lactation.
Yeah, that's brand new to me. Can we take a look at the Lambeosaur on there?
Absolutely. I don't think I've ever actually looked in. I think it's open right now.
Huh.
Or at least it says, maybe not actually. Yeah, you have to have the app to unlock it.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I love this wrap that you put on the side. So this is exclusive art for this museum, right?
Yeah, so this is an Andrea Atuchin exclusive piece of artwork that we commissioned, and it's based on one of the specimens we collected 2019 up to now. A Lambeosaurus from north central Montana. The only Lambeosaurus known from the United States.
Right.
All the others are from Canada. So we called it Liberty, and we got Andre to give it a themed crest coloration.
USA flag dino, Pimcat says? Yes, indeed.
Yeah. We keep planning on making these into 4th of July T-shirts and selling them. But
That would be really cool,
not quite done it yet, but next summer, or this summer I should say now, we're kind of planning on. This is one of the other mummies that we have. So the skull you'll see in a bit.
That's gorgeous.
It's a
oh
beautiful
man.
skull.
Yeah.
But the skeleton was sort of partly articulated, but the right side of it was lying in the mud, and the left side is scattered all around, all over the place. But the right side has skin all over it. So we've got it surrounded in plaster, and we're going to pull that out next year. And we may pull it out on the 4th of July, just for a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But
that'd be awesome. Yeah. You should live stream it if you can.
yeah, maybe. We do actually get the internet connection there at that site because we're very high up on the cliffs. It's a very convenient site for access.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful site. We'll talk about it quite a bit more as we show you some more stuff.
Very cool. Who found Liberty in the first place, the specimen?
Jack Wilson found it originally.
Okay, yeah.
The site's called Jack's Bone Bed. It's an enormous
Oh,
bone
okay.
bed. There's lots and lots of bones coming out one side of all sorts of different animals, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But then about 50 meters away in the same horizon, there was this little bit of white bone coming out. And you don't know what it was, so we dug around it. It's a lower jaw. And then as we went around this lower jaw with teeth in it, we found the other lower jaw with a beak attached. And that was the point at which we're like, well, we'll take that first one out and we'll cover up the rest, because if you've got the beak attached to the other lower jaw, the likelihood is there's probably more of the skull.
Yep.
And we needed an excavation permit to do that. So we went back the following year and went in and whole skull.
Nice.
And,
and you'll see this in a little bit when we get
Yeah.
down to the other floor, yeah.
Yeah, Jack Wilson found that in 2019, I want to say.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, that's my former roommate there, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and namesake of Daspletosaurus wilsoni.
Exactly.
Yeah, whom we'll see over there.
So we have a lot of lovely minerals.
Yeah.
I think they're very nicely displayed because they have lots of different colors juxtapositioned against each other, and because you can walk around these, they sparkle as you move, so people really like the mineral exhibit. It also improved a lot. We changed the lighting. I mean,
It does look a lot better than it used to.
it's a very boring subject, but I learned a lot about light bulbs, and these ones are much whiter. They used to be a bit more yellow. They've got narrow beams, and it really makes the colors pop. It's much better than it used to be.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ooh, this is new and exciting. Should we talk about the stegosaur right now?
Yeah, so I used to bring the school tours here, and I'd tell them that our stegosaur was sleeping and the allosaur was guarding it, and they'd be like...
Because it was on its side. It looked like that Triceratops over that looked flat.
It was lying flat on the ground, and the kids were like, no, it isn't. Well, yeah. Anyway, just this last... about 4 months ago, in fact, this was delivered. We had the bones shipped to Colorado last summer, and they were mounted. And now it's standing up. So we put it together in place so we have an idea of the size of it. But with the new renovations to the museum, it's obviously going to be raised up to be the same height as the allosaur, and it's going to be the centerpiece of the main exhibit hall, and it's going to be part of a presentation of some of the new ideas I have about armored dinosaurs and things like that.
Nice.
So it also looks a million times better standing up, obviously.
It looks so good. Yeah. Yeah.
With the Allosaurus sort of circling.
Uh-huh.
So they're both really nice mounts. They're actually done by the same people.
Because this was here before you got here, the Allosaurus. That's been here since the 90s, right?
Right. I think they were all mounted. Well, Chris Madsen did the Stegosaur just for us, and he said that it was him that actually mounted the Allosaur and then the Albertosaur for this museum back in the 1990s. So he had history, and so this whole thing is his rather than just the bit that he just did.
Very cool.
That was nice to find out. We didn't know that when we commissioned him to do it. So that's really cool.
All right. Should we take a look at Warwick stuff, maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, we've got, is he still in here? I think I saw Filippo in here. Filippo Bertozzo works on hadrosaurs. Yeah, there he is right there.
Filippo knows more about the specimen than I do. This is yeah, he came to see this. Back in 2019.
Nice.
So this specimen was found in 2009. So me and my dad were collecting in the Hell Creek for the Museum of the Rockies, and my dad came across some neural spines, some vertebrae pieces sticking out of a hill. And we went over there, and it's like, well, you could see it was going in, so that looked promising. So we dug in. After a couple of days, this is what we found. And it was a little bit disappointing because it was just a section of tail and part of a leg. There were a couple of neck bones, but there wasn't much else. But when we started cleaning up the vertebrae more, we noticed that they were injured. Badly injured, and not just one or two injuries like you often see, but this had injuries across like 20 vertebrae.
Jeez.
And this is in fact one of the best examples of this kind of pathology, this kind of injury that you can see on any hadrosaur in the world. And Filippo, who's watching this, he's writing papers about this specimen and a number of other specimens as well. He's an expert on
pathologies and ornithischians, yeah.
Yeah, pathologies and ornithischians in general. So, we presented on this in 2019 at a conference we were holding here. And basically what's really cool is that each one of these broken spines shows the same injury.
Yeah.
It was hit from above, and the spine was broken and shoved down to the left side. And then it healed, if you can call this healing, and some of those broken spines have kind of fused onto the left side. Other places they're completely missing. Some places they're just buckled rather than broken. And a little bit later I can show you another specimen that we have of a Brachylophosaurus, which is from 8 million years before these guys, which shows exactly the same injury. And that's what's really interesting. We see this kind of injury in duck-billed dinosaurs. So not just Edmontosaurus, this is an Edmontosaurus, but we see it in Brachylophosaurus, we see it in Iguanodon, we see it mostly in the hadrosaur, more derived forms. These broken spines, usually from the middle or late in the back, and then down the tail. It's been suggested that maybe this is the result of like tyrannosaur attacks, that kind of thing. But the problem with that is that there's not really any evidence for that. The suggestion was the specimen in the Denver Museum has like a little notch in the tail, and it was just the right size and shape for a tyrannosaur bite. But anything that's a rounded gap will be the right size and shape. And this is not. This is all the way down the tail. And in fact, there's many specimens that look just like this. And you can tell that these are impacts from above as well. So we think these are mating injuries.
That's what somebody in the chat suggested, yeah.
Yep. That's what we think these are.
Yeah, yeah. It would make a lot of sense. So how would you test that hypothesis?
Well,
figure out if this was female?
That's one of the challenges. Like right now, telling male and female dinosaurs apart is almost impossible.
Yeah.
If you're really lucky, you could look inside the leg bones and you might find medullary, a special kind of bone tissue that the females lay down when they're doing calcium storage type things for eggshell and things like that. So if you were lucky, you'd find that. But if you don't find it, that's not an indication that it's male.
Right.
It just means it's not a laying female.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's you could look at percentages and things like that. There's a few different ways to investigate that, and that's basically what Filippo's working on. With
cool.
his research.
He said that he just got back on that recently too. He wants you to know.
Oh, good.
So
good. Yeah. It's really cool. I think absolutely, I agree. I mean, people think it's kind of wild, but you know what? It makes more sense than anything else.
Yeah.
Unless hadrosaurs had a habit of like flipping over and smacking on their back, which is
they really like doing front flips, but they weren't very good at it.
Well, they just were really clumsy and kept standing next to trees that fell over.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make everything else would just be accidents, whereas this is more. There's something about this body plan that makes them susceptible to a particular kind of injury.
And this is not an injury that happened while the animal was really small. It's not like an adult stepped on it when it was only a meter tall or anything.
Well, when did this injury happen is a question. And you can look at the amount of healing, again, if you can call it healing, but these bones aren't just broken, they fused up, but there's still some inflammation around some of the broken areas. So I'm not a bone pathology expert, so I don't know how long it takes for that kind of healing to take place, but it's obviously not the space of just a few days. This is at least weeks and weeks, I'd have thought, if not months and possibly many years. I don't know. Filippo surveyed this kind of injury in many individuals, and I don't know if there are any of them that show, I don't know, finished bones. So that's his research. I don't know. But that's the sort of thing that we can look at.
Very cool. Yeah.
It goes all the way down the tail as well. You can see they just get warped by the others.
Wild.
And it's a super cool specimen. It really is. It tells a story. It's not just, here's a skeleton. It tells you about the animal's life.
Right.
Its miserable life.
It's not easy being a duck-billed dinosaur. No. Yeah. And I want to emphasize, too, that the reason we know that this happened during its lifetime is because you've got those signs of healing, if you can call it healing.
Right.
Yeah, so, I don't know. Just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that part. Yeah. Let's see. Let's take a look at... should we continue on the subject of injuries here?
Can do if you want.
Yeah.
So this Triceratops here is called Larry the Triceratops, and it was found in North Dakota by my predecessor, Larry League, who founded this museum. And it's a good Triceratops postcranial skeleton. There's actually, even though there's loads and loads of Triceratops known in collections all over the world, there's not actually all that many good skeletons. There's been a few more found in recent years, but there's not very many at all still. And this one, the skull, there's a few bits have been filled in there, and we're missing a few things like the pelvis, but it's actually quite a good postcranium. Now, I was in the sand pit here about 6 years ago, and we were dusting, because every now and then we've got to get in there and dust, and it's good fun to have a beach party as well. And I noticed that a bunch of vertebrae in the tail were all fused together. The last four, actually.
Yeah, that's right down there. Yeah.
So you can see, down there you can see there's a fused mass, and then like a kink in the tail. Those last vertebrae of the tail actually don't go with this specimen. We don't have any vertebrae further down the tail than those last four that are fused up. But the real specimen is here. So we brought it out of the pit, and we put it on display so people could see it more easily.
So the one down there is a cast of this?
Yeah, that's a cast of this.
Yeah.
So this is the real one. And you can see they're all fused together, and they shouldn't be. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertebrae, all fused. And not only are they fused, they're kind of bent and twisted. So if the end of Larry's tail was present in his life, it would have been kinked to one side. So he either had a stump or he had a kink in the end of his tail. And obviously not a life-threatening injury. So he probably lived on for a while after this, although this is not a fully sized animal. So he didn't live until great age. But then the question is, how do you get this kind of injury? And, you know, he could have smacked it against a tree, maybe it had been attacked by a tyrannosaur, or the simplest explanation is simply that it was probably stamped on by another dinosaur on the end of its tail. But we had a nice picture done.
Yeah, this is gorgeous.
We call him Kinky Larry because he's got a kink in the end of his tail. But this is another Andrea Tuccian piece
Beautiful
of artwork
art,
that
yeah.
was done.
Gorgeous.
We have a big printout of it over there as well. So we like to get portraits done of all of our feature specimens, especially if they tell a story, if they've got a special feature about them. So it's really nice. And Andre's work is just absolutely fabulous.
Yeah,
So,
it really is. Take a look at that.
I mean, this little picture doesn't do it full justice. Over there, you can see all the sloughing of the keratin on the frill and stuff. It just looks amazing.
Really neat. So, do you want to talk about what's going to happen with this once you do the renovations, or?
Yeah, so the plan, as you can see right now, there's a kind of old-style sand pit with a bunch of things sat in it, and the sand is going to go away. We're going to take down the barrier, and the skeletons that are lying on the ground are going to be wall-mounted. This Triceratops will turn it into a flat wall mount, and we have an Edmontosaurus just to the right, which is a composite skeleton. I'll probably make that into a wall mount. We're sort of deciding right now. It's a composite, so it's probably like 100 different individuals glued together. But it's all right for what it is. I might mount that to a wall. I haven't decided yet. It's not going to stay lying on the ground, though. But, you know, we might put it in the airport, something like that.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Depends on a lot of things. Depends on how much space we have once we start putting all these other new things in here. But it'll free up a lot of room if we take everything off the floor and mount it on walls or put it in the air in some cases, that kind of thing.
What's the timeline, you think, for it'd be like the next couple of years, maybe?
Certainly in the next couple of years. Whether or not it takes place this winter or the following winter remains to be seen.
Like this coming winter or the following winter? Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
We're supposed to be breaking ground this summer and doing a lot of the outside work with pipes and all the electricity and stuff like that to make sure that that's all in place so that when we put the new building on top of it, it's all operating.
Very cool. Oh, and this is neat. This is something that you did pretty early on, right? Was swapping out the Thescelosaurus head?
A little bit. When I first got here, we had this Thescelosaurus model, and Clint Boyd, who's the world expert on Thescelosaurus, he's just up the road. He's 100 miles away in Bismarck. It's a long way in Europe, but it's not far here. That's where you go do your shopping half the time. Anyway, so he said, yeah, it's got the wrong head on it. And so the story was that Thescelosaurus, when it was found in 1891, and then it was described in 1913, it was basically a complete skeleton, but it didn't have a skull.
Yeah.
So no one knew what its head looked like.
The name Thescelosaurus means marvelous lizard. Thescelosaurus neglectus, marvelous but neglected lizard, because it was discovered, what year did you say?
Yeah, it was discovered 1891, but not described until 1913.
It just sat in a box in the Smithsonian, I think, for like decades. Yeah.
But no one knew what its head looked like, and since the body looked a bit like an English dinosaur called Hypsilophodon, they stuck a Hypsilophodon skull on the body and just said, yeah, it probably looked like this. So for a long time, if you ever saw Thescelosaurus illustrated or you saw a skeleton mounted, it had this head of a Hypsilophodon on it. But then in the 2000s, there was a partial skull, I think, from the 1970s, in 1940, but it wasn't very good. And then in the 2000s, they started to find one or two nice, complete skulls of Thescelosaurus. And they found that it looked really quite different from Hypsilophodon. It had like a long, pointy snout and various other features that mark it out as being quite distinct. So a number of years ago, let's say 3 years ago, Actually, no, it was pre-COVID, so it would have been about 2019 probably. We climbed into the pit, and we got out our saw, and we sawed the head off the Thescelosaurus. And I tell the kids, as is traditional in Britain, I put it on public display.
On a pike, yeah.
Yeah, on a spike, to serve as a warning for other dinosaurs. And we got a cast from a tree bold of a nice reconstruction of the real skull and stuck it on there. And I think Liz painted that up so that it looked the right color.
It looks really good. Yeah, excellent. And there was a recent publication kind of supporting the idea that Thescelosaurus was a burrowing dinosaur. Does the skull reflect that in any way, you think?
I mean, I think it does, but I think that I'm not sure if that's really formalized yet.
Yeah.
I mean, the pointed snout, the wide spacing of the front teeth, I've sort of said a lot of this on this diagram, suggests to me that perhaps this is another example of a dinosaur which is semi-fossorial. It may have lived in burrows, it may have
raised its young in burrows.
Yeah, we think a lot about animals, about plant eaters eating green leaves. I always say on the school trips that come by, I say, this guy, he may have eaten roots. Do you guys like roots? And all the kids go, oh, yeah, no, we don't. It's like, you don't like French fries? Carrots and
root
parsnips? Beer? Yeah. It's like, roots are very nutritious, and yes, where the plants store a lot of the starches and things. So the idea that there might have been dinosaurs snuffling about eating roots actually makes a lot of sense. You know, leaves are actually not all that nutritious. So the idea of a root-eating dinosaur is kind of interesting, I think. Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about it, but absolutely makes sense.
You seem to do a lot of that, thinking about things in a different way and kind of challenging older ideas, assumptions, that kind of thing. That's going to be an ongoing theme again today.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
My assumption is that everything is wrong. Yeah, I mean, there will eventually everything gets revised. I mean, most of the paleo papers that we read from 50 years ago, we think are incorrect. And the ones from 100 years ago are mostly incorrect. But what lasts is the descriptions of the bones and the photographs and the pictures of the bones. That lasts. So we reinterpret them over and over again, and it's just a matter of time before all the stuff we think is correct today gets tweaked, at least. Yeah. And this is a tweak.
Yeah, it's important to tell that story too. So I'm really glad that this is on display like that. It's neat that you're able to, update something and then, introduce this concept that science is always changing and we're learning new things. And because that's something that I think not enough people hear about on a regular basis.
Absolutely, and I think dinosaur museums are a really good place to do that. I think it's almost a shame that there are no more what we call a kangarex, so the upright kangaroo pose for T-Rex, because the fact that we used to restore them that way, we no longer do, shows you the progress of science and shows how we used to think this, we found some new evidence, and now we think that. And a lot of the new exhibit is about the process of science. It's not a walk through time. It's not a taxonomic hall of mammals, hall of dinosaurs. It is about the process of science and how we find out new information about dinosaurs. This section here with all the minerals is going to be the Hall of Methods. That's a working name. And it tells you the different techniques that we use to find out new information, whether it's stratigraphy or looking at the biology, comparative biology, all these sorts of things. And then the rest of the museum will be showing how we apply those methods. So it's the scientific method that people have to understand. It's a method and not just a list of facts.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, all the facts from 100 years ago aren't facts anymore. They were facts that were wrong.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's how we progress.
It's neat stuff. Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
Some of you in the chat are probably going like, we've heard a lot of this stuff before. It's because Denver trained me in a lot of ways. I take after you tremendously in a lot of the science that I do and the science outreach and everything. Yeah.
Stealing all my best ideas.
I try and credit you whenever I can, but yeah.
We're just not able to.
I'm so glad that everybody in chat gets to meet you finally too, because I talk about you and talk about your work all the time. So this is pretty neat. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So yeah.
Anyway, we can go wherever you like.
Yeah.
This is something that me and Danny did when years ago.
2017, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the first new bit of exhibit I put in. Like you may have noticed in passing, we've got these mineral eggs, and the leagues liked collecting bits of amethyst cut into the shape of an egg, cut and polished into an egg. And I always tell people, they say, "Oh, are those real eggs?" And I got so sick of saying no.
Yeah.
They're pieces of quartz shaped into the shape of an egg. But I say, I think they make eggs because they start out trying to make a sphere, which is very difficult.
Yeah.
And if it goes wrong, they just make one end pointed and call it an egg. You can sell a sphere for more than you can an egg. But anyway, we've got all these stupid egg-shaped minerals. And I thought, fine, I'll do an exhibit on eggs because we like baby dinosaurs and ontogeny is a big deal. So
Can I do some graphic design work? And Denver's like, sure, work on this. So I designed that sign. And I don't know if I did this one.
no, I did that one.
Yeah.
Took a long time.
Yeah.
These
That's
are
really cool.
These are mostly from, what's it called? It should actually.
Philopic?
Yes, these are most.
Yeah.
Which I was,
yeah.
Yeah.
So oviparity, oviparity, and viviparity. So eggs and live birth.
Yeah, there's some weird live birth ones on there, like bass and various lizards and snakes, and plesiosaurs had live birth. It was basically working its way towards some of these fossil eggs that we've got. What is an egg? So I got caviar tins. I joked that I was buying diamonds, caviar, and laxatives on the museum budget. Those all have a use in the museum, so these are an old caviar tin.
I love the sturgeon on there. That's really cool.
Yeah, I really like the graphic work on it, actually.
That's really neat.
I bought one for my house. It's really nice. That's my favorite.
Were you a larva?
It's on its own, and it's kind of, it feels like it's a bit spread out. Like the plan is to, if we get a real fossil lobe-finned fish or something, we can replace them.
Nice.
And I have a 3D print of of the skull, at least, of which would fit quite nicely here.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I got to do that.
Put a big fleshed out coelacanth up here, too, if you want. I've got a really nice coelacanth model. You could purchase it, too, and print it. It's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we can get a real fossil.
Yeah. Oh, man, that'd be cool.
But some of this is going to be, it's not quite clear how this is the wheelchair access ramp. So the angle of it is slightly too steep for modern day ramps, apparently. So you sometimes see people whizzing past at high speed. But so this may get some adjustment with the new building. It can be grandfathered in, but we may decrease the angle a little. So it's not totally clear what this bit's going to look like.
Oh, and I remember this. This took a long time, too, but it was a lot of fun. See that signature right there? But yeah. And these, I was so pleased when I saw that you're still using these.
Oh yeah, so
yeah,
this is, I think the first one you made was this one.
I think so. Yeah.
Mainly because I know because this is the one where I haven't fixed all of the different bits on. I don't mean fixed, I mean like set in cement. Anyway. Yeah, so this is the plan for these panels, like I told Danny, I think that there's too much of the basic information often just gets strung out and written into long sentences, like what date it is from, what formation it's from, how big it was, and really all that information should be just in a little fact box. And then the text in these is supposed to be information that's unique or new. So little facts and things.
So yeah, that was during that summer in 2017 when we were waiting for our permits. I spent a couple days just designing a template like this that would be plug and play. So I chose a font and tried to pick colors that would work well with the rest of the museum, and then designed this right here and got the colors all exactly right according to geological maps and everything. And yeah, so I'm really pleased that you've been able to run with that and you're still using it. That feels like it made a real contribution there.
I've adapted it a number of times, different sizes. All these boxes look about the same size, but if they're close to the front or if they're at the back, there's like 20% difference.
Yeah.
So they look more or less the same to you, but they're actually all different sizes. It's really boring, that kind of thing. It's almost as boring as different light bulbs, but
It's important, though.
Once
Like,
you start
yeah.
putting these things together, like you start getting appreciation for the different scaling and sizes of panels.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah. Neat. And I recognize that piece of artwork there, too. I've shown this on stream before. That Oviraptorosaur? Was that City Patty, I think? Yeah. Or Oviraptor, either one. But yeah.
I tell people that this is my favorite display in the museum.
This one?
Yeah, and these days maybe it's one of the newer ones, but this was at the time my favorite, and it's because it shows the process of science. Here it is.
Yeah.
That back in the 1920s, the American Museum went to New York. They found dinosaur eggs, and they found baby dinosaurs, these Protoceratops babies, and they said, "Oh my God! Like, we've got nests of Protoceratops." And so, when this museum opened in 1992. In 1993, this is one of the models that they had, and it's a bunch of baby Protoceratops and a bunch of those eggs that were found by the American Museum. And the same year that this model was made, the American Museum had been back to Mongolia, and they'd found more of these eggs, of course, and they cracked a few open, and inside they found Oviraptor embryos.
Yeah, not Protoceratops.
Not Protoceratops. Yeah. And of course, back in the 1920s, they'd found an Oviraptor standing on top of these eggs, and they thought the Oviraptor was stealing the eggs of the Protoceratops, so they called it egg thief Oviraptor. And now we realize that the Oviraptor is actually protecting its nest, and that these are Oviraptor eggs. So I tell kids, it's like, if this model shows anything at all, it shows a bunch of baby Protoceratops smashing up an Oviraptor nest out of pure spite. That's why they look so happy. So this will learn you. But it shows the process of science. And it shows that, it was a good hypothesis. You had baby dinosaurs, you had eggs. Why aren't they both related? But it turned out that they weren't.
Cool stuff. This is neat, too, the display rather than combat thing as well.
Yes, this is a nice painted model that we've got of the Triceratops sort of...
Yeah. Is that...
Torosaurus, I should say.
Is that exclusive to... Is this an original?
You can buy that model.
Oh, okay.
I need to get labels made for it. We only put it in last year. And it should actually move into a separate display about ceratopsian sort of horns and frills. But we wanted to get it in the exhibit as soon as possible because it was very kindly donated. So
nice.
Beautifully painted up as well.
Yeah, it really is.
It looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, very nice.
And I really like that. And obviously the fossils are fantastic, but you've always got to have little bits of art and unique things as well for people to look at. So that really fits that ticket really nicely.
And that's a juvenile Corythosaurus, not Lambeosaurus? I've seen it labeled as Lambeosaurus when it's for sale online all over the place.
Yeah, I've seen it labeled as Corythosaurus as well.
Huh.
So, I could check that.
Yeah. Their babies are all going to look pretty similar to one another anyway. It's kind of like...
They do, and that's old research for ornithischians, but it just is coming out with theropods. I really like the idea that Andrea Cow was putting out. That all Compsognathids are actually not related.
They're just juveniles
They're
of
all
other...
just juveniles of all these sort of late Jurassic theropods.
Yeah.
And they all group together because
A way to test that is doing histo, which I'm sure we'll talk about later too. Yeah. Well, what's the nickname for this Triceratops? It's got a nickname, right?
Yeah, so this is Bill. Bill is found by Bill somebody.
Yeah.
He died relatively recently, just a few years ago, but it's from near Baker, Montana. And it's basically a complete Triceratops skull. The lower jaw actually doesn't go with this specimen, I don't think. It's been added, but the entire cranium is original and basically entirely there. It's quite a nice specimen. It was in a really, really hard concretion. And interestingly enough, I suspect there were probably horn sheaths preserved on the horns and on the frill. When you're in the Hell Creek and you're getting these, I can show you, like this is the original matrix. It's really hard. It's very, very hard mudstone matrix. And when you get the trike skulls in that very, very hard mudstone matrix, they often have, when you see like a piece of the matrix that comes off here, it'll have blood vessels within the matrix itself. So there's evidence of basically blood vessels running through the keratinous sheaths. And you get it across the frill. It's probably a little bit warped because the mineral form's probably a little bit larger than the original keratinous sheath. We have some parts of that still preserved that weren't removed completely, so we have these in collections. So this thing may have had some keratin on it, but it was super, super hard matrix, and so actually a lot of the surface detail has been lost on this specimen. But don't tell anyone I said that.
It's okay, we won't.
But it's a beautiful skull. It used to sit in the lab for years. And you could only see one side of it, and it was under these fluorescent lights. And we wanted to use the lab to clean up some new bones, so we had to move it out. So we put it out here, and it just becomes so dynamic because you can walk around it.
Yeah, that's great.
And really get a feel for the shape. When we put it out here, I did one of those little American museum cheats where you paint brown over plaster to make it look like bone. You'll see some of their complete skeletons. They've got entirely painted arms and stuff like that. And you wouldn't notice from a distance. But like, the real bone is under there. It's just embedded in plaster. So I think that's a good little trick. But otherwise, it's really good.
That's really nice. And look at I love seeing the blood vessel grooves over the brow horn right there. That's really striking given the lighting there. It's beautiful. So
Bill is big, but Bill is only about 2/3 grown. And if you look at the brow horns, you can see the tips of them point backwards.
Right, just slightly.
So they should be fully pointing forwards if it was an adult. And in fact, Bill, when you compare it to a full-sized Triceratops, it's actually not that big. Maybe I'll pull out a lower jaw. I've got the back of a lower jaw of a really big adult trike.
Oh, that'd be cool, yeah.
You helped collect it. Low trike, Jack's low trike.
Oh, yeah. JRH 008?
I don't remember.
2012 we dug that up? You, me, and John?
No. Not a Museum of the Rocky specimen, but one of the ones from the APR.
Oh, that's right.
It's not much of it. There's parts of a lower jaw, some bits of frill, but the lower jaw is enormous, and you can see the coronoid process at the back of the lower jaw. It's much bigger than this. It's crazy, actually. When we get the exhibit together, we'll put the lower jaw down there, and people will be able to make the comparison.
Very cool. Wow. And interesting, you've got a hole in the frill right there, that junction between the parietal and the squamosal.
Yeah, it's a thin area that's probably broken through. It's not a fenestra, it's not a pathology, it's just a broken piece. But that area, this is a Triceratops paurosus, it has a big nose horn. That area is very, very thin in more adult paurosus.
Right. Could you maybe talk a little bit about Horridus and Paurosus and trike biostratigraphy? Because I know that's something you published on before, and it's something I talk about sometimes, but there's people in the chat who I'm sure are unfamiliar.
So if you're in the Hell Creek Formation, the Hell Creek, you'll see various ages given for the length of the Hell Creek, but it's actually surprisingly little time. It's probably more like 900,000 years for the whole Hell Creek, if not less than that.
Wow.
Especially for the fossiliferous part. And within that, we get a number of zones. Well, we see Triceratops at all levels, but Triceratops looks different at different levels. So if you're in the lower half of the Hell Creek, Triceratops there has a small nose horn. If you're in the upper part of the Hell Creek, Triceratops has a bigger nose horn. This particular one, the biggest nose horn, is called Triceratops paurosus, and it's only seen in the top third. And then just below this, Yoshi's trike, you might be familiar with from Museum of the Rockies, that's from the upper middle part of the Hell Creek. Now, there is some debate as to where Horridus fits, and if you read our paper about it from 2014, you'll see we actually don't make any statement about that at all.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Horridus comes from the lower, I think it comes from the lower middle. And so, but the problem with that is the holotype of Triceratops horridus doesn't have that data to go with it, so we don't actually know that.
So, what was it, like Marsh's crews who collected that way back in the day, and they didn't take careful note of where the specimen was from, so we can't actually date it properly? Is that the issue?
Yeah, partly or mainly. I mean, one of the other issues is that I think the holotype of horridus is from the Lance Formation.
Oh.
And the Lance Formation is very thick, much thicker than the Hell Creek, up to 7 times as thick.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have as good of a feeling for the distribution of time through the Lance Formation. Whereas the Hell Creek, that's what I did for my PhD, is figuring out these different parts of the Hell Creek and how we can figure out where we are. And it's a lot easier when you've only got to deal with 85 meters of thickness. So you've got 700 meters, you've got to climb a mountain just to take a section.
Yeah.
So it's...
oh, man.
Yeah. It's 1,000 feet of rock.
Are there any places where it's contiguous, or you've got to hike miles and miles to find all
In
of
the
them?
Lance?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe driven through it, but not spent any time there.
Yeah.
Read a lot of papers about it. There are a bunch of projects that we're hoping to do at some point in the future about resolving some of those issues and questions with the Lance Formation, some of the South Dakota Hell Creek.
Right.
There are some easy projects to do to begin with for that. We just got to get started on some of them. We'll get finished on other ones first.
And then down here we've got... This is the same hadrosaur forelimb that we saw earlier. There's the hand. But this is a resin cast?
Yes, that one is resin, and it's filled with expanding foam.
Oh yeah, you can see that in the back poking out.
And that's a specific expanding foam which is shelf stable.
Nice.
So you can use the insulation foam from like housing, but that tends to go really powdery after a few years.
It's not archival, yeah.
Yeah, so this is archival grade foam. Although, of course, this is just a cast, so it doesn't need to be archival. If you were going to use it with real fossils, you would want that. But, you know, it's not the end of the world if this all fell apart. I mainly put this here because people would come to the lab window and we can have the window open, and I've got some rubber molds there, and they ask, oh, what's that mold and what's that cast? And I got sick of answering that question. So I put a nice mold and a cast out front so I can just point, and it's pretty obvious when you see them next to each other.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's the silicone mold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a one-sided mold, so it's a lot easier to make a cast because you
Yeah.
can just paint the really sticky resin in and make a very, very thin resin cast and fill it up with foam. It's nice and lightweight. It doesn't cost as much for resin.
Yeah.
It's a real positive.
Nice.
So yeah, we did that so that we could give a copy to the school and to the BLM.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And so if you've ever wondered how molding and casting works, I know I've talked about that on stream before, but like, here's an example of what the mold actually looks like. Yeah. Really nice pink color. Almost looks like strawberry milkshake or something. It's making me a little bit hungry. This one looks like a chocolate milkshake. I don't know if I had enough for lunch. I think maybe that's the issue.
I'm always happy to. This is right at the top of a hill.
Yep.
Right at the very top of a hill. There are all these bits of Triceratops
Just spilling down.
spilling down the hill, piece of a frill.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what this is here. This is the old cliff edge. And it looked quite promising. There was a decent chunk of frill there. So we dug in and we uncovered the rest of the frill. And then we went towards where the nose should be, and there's nothing there. And this was all rock. Like there should have been a face, but the face was missing. Which is kind of interesting.
We're probably 100 years too late or something like that. But yeah. So what you're looking at is the back of a Triceratops frill right now. So the neck would be coming off of here, and then the horns would be going straight down like that. So this is the back side of the frill. And check out that big ol' occipital condyle right there. Yeah, if you need to go put that in your office or something, that's okay.
Yeah, I'll just go check this in the lab.
Yeah. So take a look at this. This is the the connection between the cervical vertebrae and the skull. It's like a big old trailer ball right there. We've got occipital condyles too, but they're much smaller than this, and they're usually paired in mammals. And dinosaurs are usually one big ball like that. But look at that. This animal would have had a supremely heavy head. And so that's reflected in how robust this is. And just, yeah. If any of you have ever hooked up a trailer to a truck before, you're familiar. It's usually, what, like a 3.5-inch trailer ball? Is like, that's the standard size? This is so much bigger than that. So it gives you an idea of just how big this animal's head is and how heavy it would be. Yeah.
This specimen's got some cracks and things like that. It doesn't look as glorious as many of the frills you've seen, but it's got some features that are actually really, really important, the unique. First feature is missing a face.
Yeah.
How? Well, we don't really know, but it does have some tooth marks.
Ooh, I haven't seen these yet. So again, I collected this. I helped collect this after I found it in 2015 and 2016. And then this is like my first time actually seeing the specimen up close is this visit.
So that's a tooth mark just here.
Nice.
It's not terribly easy to see unless you get the light reflected correctly. But there was also a tyrannosaur tooth found in this spot. Not when we were digging it up, but when Destiny was doing the prep.
Yeah.
So she cleaned some of this. She cleaned like this area, and I did the top bit here.
Nice.
So we have got a bunch of these pieces, and we've also got some brow horns, but they're all broken up. So we 3D scanned this side. We did a photochrometric model, mirrored it, and then printed it out in sections.
So this part right here is 3D printed on this side just to help fill it out.
To help fill it out, but it also helps you to see where the midline is. You can see this little saddle here, and sort of line that up. That's basically this little saddle here as well. That's basically the midline there. And what makes this specimen important is that it has a shallow depression here in the frill. This is quite a large specimen, but it's not adult by any stretch of the imagination. The epis on the frill, the spikes, they are not fused, and they're a little bit pointy, and they're just starting to fuse on the top, but they're not fused there either. So this is a subadult. It's not fully grown, and it's got a very wide parietal. Now, you probably heard the whole Triceratops and Torosaurus synonymy debate. And I think there's a very good case that Torosaurus and Triceratops are the same lineage. I'm working a bit on reviewing and revising those hypotheses. I think that there's a stratigraphic signal, a signal in time, which has not really been entertained. I talked about this a little bit, and if you read my strat chart paper, you'll see what I think. But this specimen is important because this specimen is from the bottom of the Middle Hell Creek. It's probably a Triceratops horridus, and it's got a shallow depression here where the fenestrae would form in Torosaurus. Now, people would say, actually, the fenestrae in Torosaurus form in the middle of the parietal. But what happens is, we think, is that this part of the parietal grows. It expands. Well, it doesn't expand. It accretes bone on the edge. So what would be a fenestra that's close to the edge in a young animal would then become more centrally placed in an older animal. And what's important about this is people have suggested that these ridges and depressions in the frill in Triceratops are where there are muscle attachments. But this specimen actually has blood grooves going through the surface of this bone, which shows that it's just a regular part of frill, that it's not part of the muscle attachment. The muscle attachments is all here. So I would say that is a good case for what an incipient fenestra might look like. I think that I don't want to get too much into Tritoro stuff. But the fenestrae are not a defining characteristic because they're primitive. So there are a number of reasons why we shouldn't be thinking of Torosaurus as being a real taxon, because it's not actually very easily definable. People will tell you it is, but it's not. And these sorts of specimens are really important in helping to tease apart the sorts of information that we can use to further that investigation into that hypothesis.
Nice. You got plans to publish on this?
Yeah, well, it's another thing I've got to get done.
So many things to do.
But one of the most important things to remember about this is these depressions are on the underside of the frill.
Yeah.
Like so many Triceratops, are preserved the correct way up, which of course makes sense. They look, who wants to go to a museum of upside down dinosaurs, unless you're in Australia or something. But if you want to see these depressions, you have to look on the underside.
Yeah.
And most of them aren't displayed that way up, so you don't see them. But they're there in more than just this specimen. Like we have other specimens from Montana and the Museum of the Rockies that show something similar. So we're starting to get together more of that information. Because, I mean, regardless of whether or not you believe Triceratops and Torosaurus are the same animal, they are actually sister taxa. And that means that Triceratops evolved from an animal that did have fenestrae. And I don't believe that all Triceratops would have formed holes in the frill anyway.
Especially not later in that lineage, yeah.
Right. And then there's a lot of heterochrony going on. But it's sort of, in many ways, it's more complicated and more simple. It just depends on what data you look at. Where do you want to go next?
Yeah, let's...
We can go into collections, or we can, depends what timing you've got. We can...
Yeah, let's see. It's like 3:10 right now, so we're like an hour, 10 minutes into the stream.
I walk around this exhibit a lot and
Yeah.
with our streams, but I don't know if we have many people who cross the streams. But
Should we talk about, well, I don't know, do you want to talk about any of these smaller displays over here? Before we move on to the really cool stuff like Trurarchunkus and claws and all that?
well, I can just point to them and just say, well,
Yeah.
these are a lot of the older displays that we had when we came in, and I've started squashing them together and condensing them a bit. And there's mammal material there. There's some quite nice mammal skulls, mostly from White River. There's some crocodile pieces, and there's actually some bird bones from the Hell Creek, which is not terribly common.
That would be really neat. Can we go take a look at those real quick?
Can do.
Yeah. Hell Creek bird bones.
There's
Not
some,
common.
We actually have some neck vertebrae. These are from, at least some of them are probably from Hesperornithoforms. So these flightless sort of,
Yeah.
I was going to say penguin-like, but penguins or loon-like, the paddling sort of diving birds.
A running theme on this channel is ocean dinosaur, and I say, well, I guess it would have to be Hesperornis or Baptornis or something. There's some of the very few ocean dinosaurs from the Mesozoic are these guys. Since birds are dinosaurs, and plesiosaurs and mosasaurs and ichthyosaurs and marine crocodiles are not dinosaurs, this is one of your few options for ocean dinosaurs.
One of the projects I'm working on with, I was going to say one of the students, but Danny is a student, but we have all sorts of people doing projects like that.
That's Daniela, right?
Yeah, Daniela,
Yeah.
And is some neck vertebrae that they were hidden in a bag with some crocverts, I think. And I was like, these are bird. And bird neck vertebrae are very distinctive. They have like a double articulation. So we looked at them, and actually they're not neck vertebrae at all. They're from the middle of the back. And I never really realized, but Hesperornithoforms have neck-like vertebrae in the back. Their back vertebrae are wildly, they have the double articulation as well.
So they're flexing, maybe? They're snaking around?
It's like their entire body, other than the pelvis, is like a big snaky. It's pretty weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to only really investigate things when I have fossils like to look at, or if I've collected something.
Yeah.
So we've been looking into this, and I'm sure Hesperornithoform experts have probably known this for a long time, of course, all the way back to Marsh. And I was quite surprised. I thought that's pretty cool. So we're working on describing those. It's just a couple of verts, but that's not that common for the Hell Creek. So that's a pretty cool little project.
Is that an ornithomimosaur claw right there?
No, that one there might be. That one there's turtle.
Oh, huh.
It's possibly a small ornithomimosaur, that one that's next to it.
Yeah.
A lot of this, and one of the phalanges is certainly, a lot of the older identified stuff is not necessarily correct, especially the theropod teeth. And a lot of the smaller stuff we will definitely be revising. Like you've got to have your small stuff in the exhibit because it's really important.
Yeah.
It's super interesting, all the small critters. And you get such a diversity of them. You only find odds and ends usually, but there's lots of cool stuff.
Nice kind of sample platter of what the environment was like.
Yeah.
And we've got somebody in chat, Alexander Morrison, who's super excited about this, maybe Borealisuchus skull?
This one is that one's not real.
That's a sculpt.
That one's a think it's mostly a cast. But,
Okay, nice.
With some sculpted parts.
Yeah.
A Lydiasuchus, Borealisuchus.
Huh.
We have partial skulls of Lydiasuchus from the Judith River. And I can show you a little bit later.
Ooh, yeah.
The new crocodile skull that we got this last summer, which is actually
It's
probably only the
it's
second
gorgeous.
one known
Yeah.
of its kind.
Really pretty, yeah.
There's some really quite big Lydiasuchus parts. One of the interesting things in the Hell Creek is like most of the inland or more inland deposits that we have in Montana, the crocodile material isn't that large, but I think when we get out into the Dakotas, we're a little bit more coastal, and the crocs just start getting bigger.
Uh-huh.
Like I definitely noted that the crocodiles, the champsosaurs, the fish, all this stuff that's being collected by the leagues from very easternmost Montana and then into North Dakota is larger bodied than what I'm used to seeing in the more western
Sure,
Hell Creek
around like Hell
deposits.
Creek State Park in that
Yeah.
area, yeah. Garfield County.
Whether that's some kind of bias or whether that's because the animals were just bigger near the mouths of the river, where the rivers were bigger, etc., I don't know, but it's at least a decent hypothesis. So I was a bit surprised by some of that.
Let's see. Do you want to talk about your Argentinosaur vertebra over there? That's a blast from the past. So this is back when Denver and I were in Montana. Would that have been like 2012, something like that, that Nate built that?
Yeah, so back in 2004,
Oh.
I was reading off the panel, I don't remember what year it was. 2004, me and Bob Sullivan were down in New Mexico, and I think Bob came across these pieces of an Alamosaurus vertebra coming out of the hill. And we dug in, and it's the bottom, it's the centrum at the bottom of the vertebra. And it was heavy, and we had to carry it out on a stretcher, just me and Bob, and I cursing the whole way. It was like a mile and a half, and it took us a whole day moving like 6 foot at a time. But anyway, we got it out, and we cleaned it up, and it's absolutely huge centrum. It's about 1/3 of the centrum. It's not even complete.
Jeez.
So I described it and published it in 2007, I think, maybe 2008, something like that. And Nate, who is now the curator, he's now Dr. Carroll, the curator at Carter County Museum in southeast Montana. He sculpted this. It was one of the first things he was doing, sculpting out of foam. So this is just pink housing insulation foam. And you can carve it very easily using various tools, just like scrapers and things. And he's done like some really nice work now. He carved like a whole pterosaur skeleton. and
Yeah,
stuff
it's gorgeous,
like that.
yeah.
This is like his first kind of attempt. And what's crazy about it is the centrum at the bottom, we've made it a little bit too long in this model. But the processes on the top look enormous, but actually they'd probably be even bigger than that.
Jeez.
When you look at the Alamosaurus neck that the Texas Museum has on display in Dallas, Dallas Museum, I should say, the Perot Museum, that's what they call it now in Dallas, they have a complete neck, more or less, of Alamosaurus. And you can see the centra, you can see the processes on top. And the processes are massive compared to the centrum. And the centrum that we collected from New Mexico is much, much larger than that Texas specimen. Even though the Texas specimen is big, the specimen from New Mexico is much larger, like, I don't know, 30% bigger, something like
Jeez.
that, 50% bigger. So we only have the width of the vertebra really as a good measurement, but it's the same size, more or less, as Argentinosaurus.
Which is often cited as the largest dinosaur.
Yeah, I mean, we only have part of the vertebra. There are other pieces that suggest Alamosaurus would get that big, parts of a femur and other things like that. So individuals of Alamosaurus would be absolutely enormous.
So we're talking like 130 feet long, something like that, right?
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
When you've only got fragmentary skeletons,
It's
like,
really difficult to estimate, yeah.
how long of a tail does it have? Or how long of a neck does it have? But certainly a very massive animal, very heavy animal.
So it's up there with all the other biggest sauropods so far. Like it's a contender there.
Yeah, it's proportionally
Yeah.
comparable to things like Argentinosaurus,
Jeez.
there or thereabouts. And yeah, it's so we had this model made. Nate made it. So when we did the press on the paper, it's like this is just one neck vertebra. But I'm very glad we didn't find the whole thing. Given
Yep.
how big it is.
So a human neck vertebra would be what? Like this? Human cervical vertebra? Yours are probably a bit bigger than mine, but yeah.
Compare that to this. That's nuts. Just wild.
And I expect where we dug that vertebra out, these bones are so big, it's quite difficult to make them move. There may be. Yeah, that's a new challenge for New Mexico. Digging is going back to some of these sites where we collected things in the past, odds and ends, digging in and seeing if there's more. I expect at least some of those sites there will be. But you just got to get into the mindset of digging big holes.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something I learned at Museum of the Rockies.
Yep. Something you taught me. Yeah.
Like, we run the biggest field operation in the Northern Great Plains now.
Right here. Yeah.
Our museum. We do 3 months of field work. We have at least 2 crews running at the same time. And we dig enormous holes, and we've really got some fantastic specimens as a result of doing that. We've also dug some holes that basically gave us nothing, but you roll the dice and you dig a big hole, and sometimes there's a fabulous fossil comes out, and sometimes there isn't. But it all evens out, and if you get it right, you get some good stuff.
Now, with those field crews, you take people from all over the country and all over the world. It's like a mostly volunteer sort of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's me and Steve, and then Liz as well. Like, we crew chief it, and we have volunteers from all over the world, and all over America, and all walks of life. Like, so we have about 50% students because they have like more time in the summer, that kind of thing, and fewer family commitments, that kind of thing. But the other 50% is like literally everyone and everything. Like, we have retirees, we have teachers, we had a whole bunch of military cadets and veterans last year, and fire crew. I mean, literally every a cross section of everyone.
That's really cool. Yeah,
it's I like that because it's really important to me to make paleontology accessible. We used to have more volunteer opportunities in America and in Britain, but almost everywhere has gone full pay dig, thousands of dollars for like a week's worth of digging or something like that, and there's just so fewer opportunities for regular people to go and dig. And the way I put it is like, could I have afforded to do this?
I couldn't.
When I was in college,
Yeah.
and especially like my dad, who he wasn't a paleontologist. He liked to collect fossils, but like, could he have been able to have this opportunity? And if you start limiting the kinds of people who can go out and dig, you start limiting. You limit our ability to learn new things. Like, there's so much potential in all these people that come out, and that's why I like to do projects with the people who want to do projects. So I've got 2 or 3 research projects with our field crew from the last summer, and people have a chance to be involved in these kinds of things. I wish we had a bigger field crew and more opportunities. I get so many applications every year. I don't advertise anymore because then people find us, and I think I've had 20, 30 applications already this year.
Jeez, wow. It's only February.
Yeah, we have big crews and we dig up big things.
Yeah. And you said the largest field program in North Dakota right now, right? So
we're the largest field program in the Northern Great Plains.
In the Northern Great Plains.
We're bigger than anyone in Montana, bigger than anyone in Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota. I mean, like I say, we do 3 months solid field work. We go out and we don't come back. And we sometimes bring a bunch of fossils back, but we go straight back out again. And we run at least 2 crews. And last year we ran 3 crews for most of the summer.
Yeah.
And
this is something that I talk about a lot, and it's something that I got from you too, the importance of field work. It's like if you're not collecting, if you're not bringing back new specimens, like, what are you doing?
Our science is a science based on specimens, and you need new specimens. That's what pushes things forward. You learn, even new specimens of a common dinosaur, you learn something new from basically every specimen. And it's just like, we need to go out there and get specimens. I'm a curator, and I was told by another curator once, curators build a collection. And that's what a curator's job is. It's not teaching classes. It's not doing all those other things. You build a collection. You want to teach classes, you're a professor. You want to be a curator, you're telling the public about what you've got, and you're building a collection. You're adding to our knowledge from specimen-based angle. That's what makes us different. I think you really only start to realize that when you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of museums versus being in like an academic department. Like my office is a mess full of like things to do with displays and research and specimens rather than other stuff.
Right.
Ramble.
Now, speaking of new specimens,
This isn't labeled yet, but holy cow, is that something?
That's right. I'm too lazy to put a label on it. But that actually is the tail of Denver's Tyranno, which is one of the 4 tyrannosaurs that we've collected in the last few years. This one is in a concretion. The rest of the skeleton is in our lab, and we can go in and take a look at it. But this is the loop of the tail. It's like the mid-tail to the end, almost near the end of the tail. And it's a weird specimen. When we came across it, it was sticking out of the rock feet first. And if you've got one foot, you might just have a foot. But if you've got both feet articulated, the likelihood is they're together because the hips are together. And if the hips are together, the rest of the body's probably together. So we dug in. We dug a hole 10 feet deep and 20 feet wide and came across the rest of the skeleton in an epistotonic curled-up posture. So this is the tail. Most of the skeleton is in a hard concretion. So this part of the tail is a hard concretion, but the rest of it, the rest of the tail there, is in a soft rock. So it was a bit of a weird dig, like...
That's strange to have different lithologies in the same specimen like that.
Well, this is the same place as that hadrosaur with skin, and so there's a lot of concretions in this area. It's calcium carbonate concretions. Really, really hard rock, but you can dissolve it with acid if you want to.
right.
So it's related to the environment, and I think that the amount of soft tissue can contribute to...
Like the formation of a concretion like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that part of the tail probably didn't have all that much muscle or skin with it when it was buried. That's speculative, and there's all sorts of a cool story about this specimen. Its belly burst when it was dead.
We've got a question in the chat from a kiddo watching, actually. What does a Triceratops tooth look like? I don't know if we have one to show off right now, but yeah.
Yeah, I've got some in collections. I mean, you can see some in the jaw.
Let's take a look at that real quick, actually. Yeah.
Anytime we've got a young person asking the question, I try and
Pay special attention to that. Here's some Triceratops teeth right here.
So Triceratops teeth actually vary a bit depending on where you are in the jaw. You can see that the sockets towards the front are a little bit smaller than the ones at the back, and that's especially true in the upper jaw as well. The teeth are they have a strong ridge down the center. Some people say Triceratops teeth are double rooted. It's not true double root as we think of like a mammal tooth, but it's because the root of it sort of sticks over the tooth underneath, so they have like 2 prongs to it. And they'll wear off flat. There's no worn ones here, but there are, I think, on the other side. There's a little bit of wear on that one.
Yeah.
But they would shear against the teeth in the upper jaw.
So kind of like a pair of scissors or something like that.
Yeah. They would shear through plant material as they chewed it, if you want to call it chewing. But they are quite distinctive. When they're fresh and they're not worn, they have little tiny ridges up the sides, like little denticles, which have mostly been lost in things like duckbills. Primitive duckbills, and then up to about the Middle Cretaceous forms, they still have them, but they get lost in the larger forms. But they're there in ceratopsians. That's one of the ways you can tell you've got a ceratopsian tooth.
Right.
And they're very, very strong ridge down the middle as well.
Got a comment. I often hear about Triceratops having an extremely powerful bite force.
How would we test that? How would you determine that from a Triceratops skull?
Well, I mean, you'd probably model the muscle that's on there, and then you could figure out how many newtons worth of force could be exerted by that amount of muscle. They would undoubtedly have had a strong bite force. I mean, they've got a great big beak, so they're shearing, they're cutting through things. But I always think there's a bit of an overemphasis on bite force in things. I think that the mechanics of how they chew and how they forage and find their food is of great interest.
I love the texture on the rostrum there too. Just it's so gnarly and wild. Just all of these blood vessel grooves and like attachment points for keratin like that. That's
caused
really
real
something.
trouble for me when I was making the 3D model of this skull.
Yeah.
This area here was especially tricky because the lighting doesn't catch as easily, and it's got a lot of detail that the photographs have difficulty differentiating.
And that's a good question from Ms. Art Rules. Why did they have a beak-like mouth? Why do beaks evolve? I think that's something that we're still kind of figuring out. It's still sort of an open question.
Well, beaks, the problem with teeth is when your teeth fall out, you can't eat, or you can't eat as efficiently.
Yeah.
So if you have a beak at the front of your mouth, you can always snip off plant material. So from that perspective, you can basically see that, I'm not saying that they intended to evolve beaks, but we're starting to learn a lot, and this is perhaps a good time to bring the raptor in.
Yeah.
We're starting to learn a lot about how much keratin or beak-like, bird beak-like tissue covered the faces of dinosaurs and the heads of dinosaurs. And for raptors like this, which are very closely related to birds, there's actually very good evidence that all of the jaw area was covered with keratin. That it wasn't covered in feathers, it wasn't covered in skin, it was actually solid keratin. And what that suggests is that the beak-like structure of the keratin covering the face is probably primitive for bird-like dinosaurs, and possibly goes really far down the dinosaur tree. It's kind of the edge of, I'm not an expert on this, but like I know people that are, and it's interesting that you've already got this keratin. It could be for color. It's very easy to keep clean because it's quite smooth. It's not like fluffy or anything. So it makes a lot of sense for them to have keratin in these areas. And so if you've already got that, to turn it into a beak is probably easier than having to evolve it all at once. So it's, as we learn more and we get more of these fantastic fossils from China with soft tissues preserved, and more of them have these differentiated areas between the feathers and the keratin, we get a better understanding of how this sort of stuff evolves in dinosaurs.
Can you tell us a bit about this model? Because this is...
We've already got people in the chat who are recognizing this. Like, this is absolutely world class.
This is a gorgeous model right here, and
it's one of the kind of crown jewels of this museum.
Yeah, this is the second best feathered dinosaur model in the world, because the best one's behind me. But this was made by Boban Filipovic in Serbia, and back in 2009, I think it was 2000, well, maybe 2011 actually, I think. I was at a conference in Germany, and one of Boban's models, well, he'd just done it for them there. He'd made a troodontid for a footways, a trackways conference. And it was fabulous. I thought, oh my God, this thing is so much better than anything I've seen anywhere else. And I kept Boban in mind for when I had a project in the future where we could actually do something together. And we'd hoped to do something at Museum of the Rockies, but they changed the emphasis. So when I got here, I was like, I'll give Boban a call. And so we worked on, this is one of the models that I say we worked on. I asked him to make, my decisions in this were like, I'd like it to be standing and showing off basically how dromaeosaurid dinosaurs use their claws. And this is an exhibit I started putting together, and I still have to finish, about how these raptors use their claws basically. And I like to make the comparison with this horrible model behind it. This Dromaeosaurus, allegedly, this horrible slobbering Hollywood monster. And then this is what we think raptors really looked like.
Yeah.
And not only that, like, this is how they used their claws. Their claws were used for impaling prey and holding it down. And we think that because of how modern birds of prey use their enlarged digit 2s on the inside of the toe as well. And so we have some birds of prey and things as part of the exhibit here. So we talk about, people used to think these claws were for slashing, and it's very hard to slash with a claw. If you get a meat hook, it just gets stuck, but it's very good at impaling and holding things in place. And the position of that big claw on the inside toe actually makes a lot of sense. Sore throat, tongue that you can imagine. I think.
So this monitor shows some of his process and everything. It's really like this is a really cool addition to the display here.
Thank you. I put this in because Boban sends me all these pictures of the making of, and it's just fabulous. Like,
Oof, that's grisly.
there's a few things about it that are really amazing. Apart from the quality of the construction, but Boban makes this out of stuff you can get at home.
Yeah.
So the feathers are, in this case, they're mostly turkey feathers, but there's some chicken feathers there as well. But the rest of the model is clay, cardboard, insulation foam, wire. It's all just typical things that you can get at home. And, it's his great skill as an artist and as an anatomist and as a scientist. He has a master's degree in paleontology that he creates these fabulous models. And I put these making ofs in because when I was a teenager, I liked to make models. And teenagers are very difficult to make things. Yeah, there's Bowman. Making eye contact. You're not supposed to do that. They get intimidated. Teenagers I like making models. And, there's a lot of things for kids in museums, but there's not so many things for teenagers.
Yeah.
And I think when you're a teenager, you're at the sort of age when you can start to do this kind of thing. Get a bit of wire, get some foam, sculpt it, make cool models. You make whatever you like. You don't have to make dinosaurs. You can make anime characters and stuff like that. People like making all kinds of costumes and things, but it's the same principles. So I thought I'd put these in here, and anyone who's maybe not so excited by dinosaurs, but really might like the impressive model constructing and the work that goes into it, can appreciate that. So
It's neat stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then again, let's talk about
Which critters these are? So we've got a Caroraptor and Didelphodon. Why did you choose these ones in particular to have Boban make?
Well, a Caroraptor is a raptor from here in North Dakota. It's throughout the Hell Creek. It is basically the biggest raptor from the Hell Creek. Some people would think Dakota raptor, but I think Dakota raptor is a chimera. I don't think that it's a real taxon.
That's kind of a growing consensus that that's probably the case.
Yeah, I don't think there's any evidence that Dakota raptor is real. So a Caroraptor is probably the biggest raptor in the Hell Creek. And it lived here in North Dakota. We don't find many bones, but the holotype has partial jaws. It's got a lower jaw and an upper jaw, and a number of teeth. And the teeth we do find. And the teeth are actually very distinctive. They've got funny little flat facets on them. So they're like a weird raptor with flat parts on the teeth. Very distinctive. So we find those all through the Hell Creek, and they would have been stomping around here in North Dakota. The Didelphodon, that was the biggest mammal, either the biggest mammal from the age of dinosaurs or one of the biggest. It's sort of otter-sized. And there's been two beautiful skulls found now. One of them right here in North Dakota. It's at the State Museum, and I've seen it. It's gorgeous. And so it's from just near here, actually, not far away, a few hundred miles away. So from North Dakota. So I wanted to. It's a local boy, right? So it's like we've got one of our local fossils getting beaten up by an Acaroraptor. It's actually better if we had the Acaroraptor standing on top of a larger dinosaur, because we could have shown the behavior a little bit better. But I think this is a nice couple of animals to show.
Yeah.
And Boban's work is just stunning. And his latest work is even better.
Yeah. So cool. And I love how with the patagium there on the forelimbs?
Yeah.
Like, he actually has that underneath, too. Like, he didn't cut any corners here. It's like...
That's a good reason to show the making of.
Yeah.
Because because
I didn't realize that until I saw the monitor. Yeah.
all the hard work he goes into making
Yeah.
the skin and everything accurate gets covered up by the feathers, so you don't necessarily appreciate that it's all in there. It's crazy, like the level of detail he works at is just
But it all contributes to this,
unparalleled.
this gorgeous finished product like that. Like it's just from top to bottom, just world class. Yeah.
I'd say his latest models are even better.
Yeah.
Like they are.
And I heard a rumor that there might be some coming here to the museum.
A rumor, yeah. Well, Boban's making a couple of new models for a new exhibit that we'll have opening up once we get the models and once we start building it. Once I get an idea about exactly how the different parts of this room are going to be, I'll be able to fix it in place and get that in. But it's going to be an exhibit based on some of our research on Leptoceratops.
Nice. Yeah.
So we have all sorts of new stuff there. We have some skeletons and all sorts of things. It's really cool.
Very excited about that because that site that that we're talking about there, I helped work that back in, what was it, 2012, 2013, 2014, I think. It was like 3 years that we were at that site, right?
Possibly.
Yeah.
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 I'll go get the bone that goes with this one.
Oh yeah, nice. Well, shoot, some people in the chat already spotted this. Let me just show you. Absolutely gorgeous. This is Trirarchuncus, which is one of my very, very favorite dinosaurs, because I'm one of the authors on the original descriptive paper from 2020. So this is what we call an Alvarezsaur. It is him, yes, Dr. Terry, yeah. One of our very favorite dinosaurs here. So these bizarre, feathered, super short-armed, big-clawed, insect-eating dinosaurs. So this is another model that was produced by Boban Filipovic. And he actually won the Lazendorf National Geographic Paleo Art Prize for sculpture in 2018. So that is the award right there. And as you can see, it is well-deserved. This is gorgeous. Photographs really just don't do it justice. Just the intricate feathering around the face. You've got little feathery eyelashes there. It's just, like bristly whisker-like feathers all around too. And so why does it only have one claw on each arm, asked Kara Ashton. This whole group of dinosaurs, the Alvarezsaurs, are like this. They've got one big claw, and that's the thumb claw right there. As you can see, there's two little tiny claws underneath as well. We don't know for sure that this guy had this. Probably did. Most of these Alvarezsaurs seem to have that. But, it's been a mystery for a long time. Like, why did they have these super short but very, very robust arms with one big claw like that? And the thing is, we see a similar kind of pattern in other insect-eating animals, animals that are using claws like that for digging. So, critters like aardvarks, critters like silky anteaters, they've got very similar claws, just like that. So we think these guys are probably using those claws for maybe opening up rotting logs to get to insects inside. Maybe they're using those claws to dig for mammals, trying to open up mammal burrows, open up a hollow in a tree in order to get the poor mammals cowering inside. But Trirarchuncus is really special because it is the very last member of this group. It's one of the last dinosaurs that we have from North America. So this guy would have been around when the asteroid hit 66 million years ago. This is the last member of its lineage. This is the last of its kind. Trirarchuncus prairiensis. Now, the name Trirarchuncus, it's not super easy to pronounce or to spell, I suppose, but Denver picked that name. I think it's a really good one. The name Trirarchuncus means Captain Hook on account of those claws there. And prairiensis, because it was from the American Prairie Reserve, that's where Jack Wilson found the claw, this claw. Oh, man. Yeah. So that's a cast, right?
What?
The claw that you've got?
No.
That's the original.
This is the one that we have in our collection.
Yeah. So this is the medium-sized one. I've shown the paper many, many times on stream.
But look at that. Yeah. And at the time you said this might be one of the most complete ones in the world, given that it's got the tip at the end?
Yeah, this is the most complete one in the world.
Wow.
It's certainly the most complete one in North America. It's more complete than the ones from Mongolia. And what this shows is that the claw is very curved. Like, people have said in the past that you've seen reconstructions like you can see on this drawing here. It's got a quite blunt claw. Well, that was because the original Mononychus claws, the tip is broken, and people didn't realize how curved they were. Actually, one of the things that we did a lot of research on claws, and you can see that you can reconstruct the curvature of the claw by modeling a couple of circles on there. But that's relatively recently that people have been doing that, and we started doing it. But this specimen, the little tip, it was broken, but it was right there next to it, and we can see how complete it is.
Just incredible. Yeah.
So this is the most complete Alvarezsaurid claw. There are other ones that are supposed to be complete, but the tips are often still a little bit damaged.
So nobody realized how pointy they would get until you
and how curved they are.
This. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this is I think leverage is more. It's very curved, so you can hook and pull rather than digging with it. Sort of, it's more hook and pull destruction.
Very
That's
cool.
what it is. And this is a little cast made out of metal. At some point we'll have these in the gift shop.
Yeah.
Because we have them as a necklace, and it's basically a museum grade cast. I have to get more of these made. I have about 20 or something right now, but this is like a little necklace version of this. So
That's going to be a bestseller. And hopefully it'll be available on the online shop. By the way, if anybody would like to get a shirt like I have right here, type in the merch command there. Because there's the online shop is live, and you can support the museum and get yourself a really cool shirt, or a hat, or a portfolio, or a few other items too.
yeah, so this is the model that won the Lanzendorf Prize in 2018. Boban won the Lanzendorf Prize. He made the model. So this is a copy of the original award. The original one went to Boban, of course, in Serbia, and he got a lot of attention nationally for that. Rightly so.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased this one won. We entered both of them. And this one's my favorite, though.
Yeah.
He's your weird little buddy. He was made specifically to make eye contact with the visitor. So he watches you. He's just totally weird. And we worked on giving him some characterization. Like if you see the making of photographs, the crest, the silly crest, was a very late addition to the model. And it really gives it some character.
Definitely.
He looks kind of harmless, but you wouldn't say that if you were a termite or a bee.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous model. Some people say they've never seen a bird like that before, and they don't realize it's not taxidermy.
Yeah.
I think it's a level above the Acaroraptor, which is exciting, but it looks like taxidermy.
It's absolutely world class. Like, when you said, I remember you talking about this, you're like, this is going to be the best feathered dinosaur model in the world, and I think
I think Boban
really
took
is.
it to a new level with this,
Yeah.
and everyone else has been catching up since. And it just blew me away.
Yeah.
I'm so amazed by it. I love looking
incredible.
at this thing every day.
Yeah.
And these are they last so long too. I mean,
Yeah.
I imagine like this is going to be one of those models, and in 100 years, people will come into the museum and they'll see it. And just like all the famous models you see in the big museums on the East Coast and things like that, this is going to be one of those.
But it's here in Dickinson, North Dakota. I mean, putting this down on the map.
Oh, that's so awesome. Jeez. Should we talk a bit more about
The claws exhibit and everything?
Can do.
Take a look at that? Yeah. 'Cause it's such a neat story. Yeah.
It's been a work in progress. I'm kind of figuring out how it fits into the space. But Boban actually made that logo as well.
cool,
So
yeah.
they're all pinned in place right now. It's going to be done bigger and better than this, but this is kind of a first run. So, we used to think that Deinonychus looked like this. quite possibly one of the ugliest models. We've gone from one of the most beautiful dinosaur models to one of the ugliest dinosaur models, but it served its purpose for many years. But this is obviously based on the Barker 1969 drawing. And
Did they put baryonyx claws on the digit too?
yeah, there's a lot of things about this that don't really work. But that's a lot of people's idea of what these animals look like. And as we learn more about birds and dinosaurs, obviously we learned that Deinonychus looked a lot more like a bird.
Yeah.
And so we start looking at the feet and we say, well, what does it do with that big digit 2 claw? Is it really standing on one foot and slashing with the bouncing tail? I was told a number of years ago by someone, I don't remember who it was, that some birds of prey have a big digit 2 claw as well. And I'd looked at some birds of prey and I hadn't seen it. So back in 2007, I want to say, 2008 maybe, John Scannella, now the curator of the Museum of the Rockies, we were all grad students there, he comes into the office and says, there's a box of bird of prey feet in the collections, all dried out. They were from animals that had died while they were being looked after by the Raptor Center in Bozeman. They were injured and things like that. And so I thought, wow, I can have a look and see if this is true. So we go and have a look, and lo and behold, some of them have a big digit 2 claw, and some of them don't. And there's all sorts of different proportional differences. So you're like, what do they do with it? Which ones have it? And that's where these research projects came in. So there's little summaries of that on these figures. You can see basically that hawks and eagles have a really big digit 2. And falcons have a little digit 2. It's still the biggest claw, but it's nowhere near as big as in hawks and eagles. Owls have a big claw on every toe, but it's low curvature. And ospreys have a big claw on every toe, but high curvature.
Yeah.
And so we basically were looking at why do hawks and eagles have a really big 2 and falcons only have a moderate size 2? What does it all mean? And we basically came up, we looked at loads of videos. These are the days when YouTube was relatively new.
Yeah.
And people didn't all have smartphones. So there weren't as many videos. But there were still quite a few videos that people were making of birds of prey killing and capturing their prey. So we had a lot better data than anyone had before then. And we basically found that these big digit 2s were used to latch into prey and hold on to prey. Like, they don't kill with the claw. They actually kill... the falcons will pluck the neck of the prey and break the neck with their beak.
Want to take a look?
Yeah. See the eagle.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lately.
That one's a bald eagle.
Yeah. Pretty
Can I
cool,
take
right?
a picture real quick? You want a picture with him? All right. 1, 2, 3.
There's a golden eagle there.
Yeah. Pretty big too.
Whoa.
Do they get bigger than bald eagles?
I think.
Which one? One of you will walk on.
What's that?
Oh, do one of you work here?
Oh, I work here, yes.
Yeah.
And this is doing a live stream right now. Danny streams on Twitch.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
What does that mean?
So that means that there's a bunch of people watching this show that I'm doing right now. We've got
Oh, wow.
423 people watching. Yeah.
All right, come on.
So we're showing off our fossils and
Yeah.
to all
It's
these
very
people
cool.
across the world.
This is
Yeah.
our last.
Wait,
Yeah?
also people in Massachusetts are watching.
I bet you there are probably a
We're
couple
from
people.
Massachusetts.
Really? Do you want to wave to the camera and say
You wanna say
hi
hi?
to everybody in Massachusetts?
Hi.
This was her second to last state. We just got back from Montana, so now she's done them all.
Oh wow, very nice. 50
Second to last. Who's the last state?
Wait,
Montana was the last.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nana might be watching.
Yeah, you think so?
Hi, Nana.
All right. Bye. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, so those big digit 2 claws are for latching in and holding on. And it's
So it's like what you see right here. When we say digit 2, it's the one in the middle.
yeah, the inside toe.
Yeah, because the hallux, the one that's pointing backwards, that's digit 1. So that's equivalent to like your big toe. But digit 2 is the big one on the inside. You know, like closer to the midline of the animal, if that makes sense.
And there's actually a really cool set of observations that we made that haven't really gotten hold too much. Carnivores have a big digit 2 on the inside toe, carnivorous birds. So not just birds of prey, but also crows
Yeah, and Seriemas.
and seriema.
Yeah.
So often unrelated forms, and that's because of the position of the toe and how that's a better place to be able to manipulate food. But what's interesting is, in crows, that claw is not as curved. They're not actively predaciously holding on to struggling prey with that claw, but they do use it to hold down food. So the curvature of the claw, high curvature, is indicative of actively predaceous animals, but an enlarged claw is indicative of carnivory. And this has never really been explored in dinosaurs. I think there was some work done recently about over-raptor diets and stuff. I say recently, probably 10 years ago now. If you look at the foot morphology of many of these small theropods, you can start to get a much better idea as to whether or not they may be carnivorous. And when you look at the foot morphology of tyrannosaurs, you also get an indication as to what they might be doing in terms of manipulating food. They're not stabbing and holding on to food like raptors are, but tyrannosaurs, the biggest claw is also on the digit 2, and often they've been reconstructed incorrectly because people look at things like emu feet
Right.
and ornithomimid feet as well, where the big claw's on the middle toe.
Yeah.
But that's not the case in tyrannosaurs. They also have this big claw on the digit 2 for holding down food. What's cool in tyrannosaurs is the outside toe, digit 4, has like a little hoof structure. So when you're looking at the feet of these dinosaurs, like, this project really got me looking at dinosaur feet. It's the difference between digit 2 and digit 4, which often shows you, or at least allows you to hypothesize about what the animal is doing. Digit 3 is kind of boring because it's down the midline. It's always used for walking.
Right.
It's the lateral digits that actually are...
They've got the interesting morphology there.
Yeah, they're like the Swiss Army knife. They're the tools. And the 4 is usually for stabilizing, and the 2 is on the inside, so it either stabilizes or it uses for food manipulation.
Yeah.
So all that grew from these projects. So we think that raptor dinosaurs would have used their claws like birds of prey for latching in, holding on. And then the key thing with hawks and eagles is they have a really big claw because they can't really kill their prey. They don't have a strong bite force. So they tend to eat them alive. Whereas falcons will break the neck of their prey.
Right.
So they don't tend to tumble and grapple as much as hawks do.
Does that have anything to do with the notch that they have in their beak?
Yeah, the notch in the falcon's beak is like an additional bit of leverage for the bite. The bite force is much stronger already, but they have that notch that just allows them to concentrate the force to break the neck of the prey as well. There's an awful lot of mileage left in looking at feet of modern birds.
Yeah.
And comparing them to dinosaurs. Like, there's things like the proportions of the toes, the width of the toes, whether they're as wide at the bottom as they are at the top, the shape of the articulations, how much movement there was at each joint. A lot of these kinds of things haven't really been studied in dinosaurs, and to be honest, they haven't really been studied in birds either.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of connections that remain to be made. And I know there's a few people who are looking at that kind of thing right now. I felt like when we did it in 2012, we really opened up the possibilities of understanding ecology that way. We're hand-first animals, like we use our hands for everything, but dinosaurs and birds especially, their arms are used for wings, so they don't really manipulate their environments using their arms. It's all through the feet. And so their feet are very, very variable depending on what they do with them. It's not just for walking.
Really cool stuff. Yeah. And I think it's neat too that like it was 2009 that you published the Claws 1 paper, right?
Yeah.
So like in order to be able to use birds of prey as an analog for dinosaurs, first you had to do original research on birds because nobody had done it before. Like nobody had really figured out how these claws are actually used in these modern birds of prey.
It's always a great thrill for me when that paper gets cited by zoologists.
Yeah.
Because like I'm not a zoologist, like I really don't know that much about birds, obviously compared to them, but the fact that they cite my paper or our paper and it's part of their literature, I feel like I crossed over and made a contribution there. It's really flattering that people think it's a good piece of work. It's second set of reviewers thought it was a good piece of work. First set of reviewers were a bit grumpy, but
Well, we've got people in chat who are like really avid birders, and so I don't know. I think they would really appreciate that you also really love birds and
Really
love
got me
watching
into
birds.
birds.
Yeah.
Me and Liz really got into. I mean, I always liked seeing birds and things in the garden, that kind of thing, but we really got into identifying them more. And
Yeah.
I'm not too much of a species collector, like some people.
You don't have a life
like
list?
a life list, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in seeing behavior. And things like, when do they start breeding? When do they start migrating? Do they come when there's snow on the ground or not? All those sorts of things. I look out much more for those kinds of behaviors.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand the species because you know a little bit about the food that they eat and things
Sure.
like that, their natural range. But I'm not just collecting taxa.
Right.
I can happily watch a flock of European house sparrows, which are obviously
Invasive,
not
yeah.
native, they're invasive, but they have all sorts of cool behaviors, and they've learned so much. They're so much cleverer than European house sparrows. They've adapted so amazingly well, and it's quite interesting to me, that kind of thing. Like competition and adaptation.
Yeah.
Like I'm really interested in how we see replacements of species and the ways that different species can replace and compete with others.
Right. Neat stuff. Yeah. Theropods. I do a thing on my channel every Thursday called Thursday Birds Day, where different people from the community will upload pictures that they took of birds throughout the week, and then we'll just talk about them. And I've learned a tremendous amount about birds just doing that. But it's an excuse to like get people outside so they can, touch grass, so to speak, and everything, and just appreciate that like there's dinosaurs all around us today too. It's fun to think about.
And some of them can talk.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this back.
Yeah. Speaking of birds, let's take a look at this.
We walked right past it earlier, but the harness right here.
This is one of the ones that I made back in 2017. Denver got these.
Ontogeny.
Exhibit hall, and do you remember what I said, Denver, when we were painting this? You're like, what color should we paint it? And I said, well, whatever you do, don't choose yellow because everybody's going to call it Big Bird.
That's what I call it. That's Big Bird.
Yeah,
But that is life size. That's Apiornis right there.
Yep.
The biggest bird that's ever lived.
yeah, and there's its egg right there.
The reason why it's painted that color, and like, I don't know if you said this, but like, this is the brownest building in Dickinson. It's a brown building with brown walls, and the fossils are all brown, and the sand is brown. And they even pick brown carpet. So it's just so ridiculously brown.
Yeah.
I wanted to get some color in here, so I started doing these big silhouettes. But some of them are drawn by Danny, all of them, and sticking a skull on them and sticking them to the wall just to get some color in place. And as we get more artwork commissioned and stuff, we're adding more color to the wall.
I don't know, I like brown, but
It is nice to have more color here too.
We have plenty of brown in the wooden cabinets and the fossils. We don't need it on the walls as well. I mean,
fair.
yeah, it's
Yeah. I think this is really fashionable in like the early 90s. This sort of,
What do you call this? Wheat oak?
yeah, that's wheat oak.
Yeah.
It's like a jaundiced yellow oak color. It's,
yeah.
But this was one of your first major successes at the museum, I remember. This is something that you were really proud of. It looks so much better than it used to, too.
it's had. There's a little bit too much light from above right now, but this is the augmented reality sandbox. It was designed by Keck, UC Davis. At UC Davis, they originally, I think the idea came from some Czech Republic students who had made a augmented reality sort of sand thing, and UC Davis saw that and adapted the idea. They got a grant. You can build one of these at home if you want to. The software is all available for free, and it runs. This is a really old computer. Runs this. It needs a 3D card, but it's a 3D card from 10 years ago. And
And what is this right here?
this is a.
People in chat would recognize this, I'm sure.
what is it called? A Kinect sensor from an Xbox, I think.
Yeah,
Xbox
Xbox
Kinect.
Kinect.
And they're harder to get, but they're not expensive. That's like $30 or something.
Uh-huh.
Or it used to be anyway.
It says right there. Xbox 360, yeah.
Yeah, you need the Kinect sensor, then you need a USB converter, which is like $5 or whatever. Goes into the computer. And then this is a standard, this is a short throw projector, but you can use a long throw one. You just have to mount it a bit higher. But it's fairly standard. And then you move the sand around, and it shows you a topographic map.
That's so cool.
The colors are a little bit stronger if the white light above there isn't on, but you can also make it rain.
That's so neat. Yeah.
Ours is the only one in the world where the colors can change on the fly. I need to restart it to make it do that. But,
That's pretty darn cool.
That's the guts of the beast. It needs to be restarted every day.
That was quick. Wow.
Oh yeah, it doesn't take long. And so,
That would have to like reboot Windows.
ours is the only one where you can just press a button and it changes the color. So now it's ancient earth with lava, or you can go for, that button needs some work, but I have these different color settings.
That's so cool. It's really neat to have, interactive things in museums for kids, but this is one that actually can teach real concepts. It's not just a button that you push. It's not just a lever that you pull or whatever. It's...
Right. I really liked it because kids learn topographic lines and how topographic maps work just by playing. You can see all the lines on there. There's different colors for the mountains, the tops of the mountains, the bottoms. And then UC Davis were interested because when you add water, rain, it shows you how watersheds work.
Very
You
cool.
can make the water flow down these streams and rivers. So it's a fabulous learning tool. Everyone loves to play on this thing. I didn't design it; I built this. But the software and the overall way that it works was obviously made by UC Davis people.
Very cool.
But, although I did code it so that it changes color on the fly.
Oh, nice.
That was I don't really know why it works actually. I just messed around with it until it did. Because it runs on Linux, and I'm not a great programmer.
Still, impressive stuff. Yeah. Really neat.
Yeah, it gets a lot of love. We've had to redo the panel outside with hard stuff because they get worn by all the kids with all the sand. But that's fine.
Yeah.
It's
meant to be used.
It takes a lot of abuse, but it gets used every day for a long time.
Yeah. Should we take a look at...
Let's take a look at that Ankylosaurus right there.
Sure.
Which is nuts.
I saw this, and it's like twice as big as the Euplacephalus skull that I have in my office.
And it's like it almost feels twice as big as
The Ankylosaurus they have on display at Museum of the Rockies.
Yeah, so this is 3D models openly available.
I need to get this.
This is CMN 8880, and it's the largest Ankylosaurus specimen that's been found, or at least the largest Ankylosaurus skull, I should say. The real specimen is missing a little bit at the front. So I took the 3D model that they provided, I mirrored the right side over and just sort of glued it in place to fill in the missing bit, and then printed it out. So yes, it's much larger than the American Museum specimen. Which is
huge animal.
You can't buy a cast of this. You can print out your own, but you can't buy a cast of it, to my knowledge anyway.
Yeah.
The ones that you can buy are the American Museum specimen, which is, as I say, is significantly smaller. And this thing is just fabulous. It's just this giant armored
Enormous.
mass.
Like, I want to give you a sense of scale here. It is absolutely huge.
Yeah, Ankylosaurus, the name means fused lizard because the skull is just like this solid box.
I've shown you this back in my office with the Euplacephalus, too. But it's just, yeah. And they had armored eyelids, too. I think about that all the time. Like, what sort of a lifestyle are these guys leading where they need to evolve armored eyelids? What sort of trouble are they getting into? where there's selective pressure for them to have armored eyelids. Solid bone eyelids. Nuts, yeah.
It's a fabulous thing. Like, once I knew there was a model there.
Yeah.
And I got more into 3D printing, and I all these big things I separate into lots of pieces. This was actually printed mostly on a small printer.
Right. Yeah.
Just in lots of sections. And if you follow the natural cracks, they don't look as obvious. It's, so, pretty happy with that.
Very cool stuff. Yeah.
And credit to the Canadian Museum of Nature for making this model available.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Apparently the real thing is so heavy it takes a bunch of people to be able to flip it over. So it sits in their collections. So this is the real one isn't on display, so this might be the only one that's on display anywhere.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy, but there you are.
That's really cool. And again, it's so big too. Like all of these dinosaurs in the Hell Creek just get ridiculously big. I mean, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. And next to it is a skull of a nodosaur. This is upside down. This is a cast, but this is a specimen we collected in 2017 from what's effectively the foremost formation of Montana.
Right.
The foremost formation is what they call it in Canada, but in Montana it's all just called Judith. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't really have any differentiation. There are some names, but they don't really line up well with the Canadian stuff. But so it's from the foremost. It's about 2 million years older than its nearest relative, and it should be a new taxon.
Yeah, this is the one that's in the welcome video. That there's a clip of you in that. I took it from the Montana news broadcast thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it should be a new species. The soundbite that you've got there, but this is the same one.
Complete cranium. The lower jaw was probably one of the first things we found, and it was on the very edge. It was mostly weathered away. We got a couple of fragments of it, but we've got lots of neck plates. The specimen is at Museum of the Rockies now because it was from private land. But it's got shoulder spikes. It's got most of the major limb bones. Doesn't have many toe bones. One toe bone. And all the small bones seem to have washed away, but lots and lots of big bones and ribs and a few vertebrae. Mostly the big limb bones, big armor plates, the skull, all the best stuff, right? And it has got the ear bones preserved as well, which is quite incredible.
That's very cool. Yeah. So again, you're looking at the underside of the skull right here. So you're looking up at the roof or down at the roof of the mouth.
Yeah, when you see it from the other way up, it just looks like a brown blob.
Yeah.
So we show
That's
it
the more
upside
interesting
down.
side. Yeah.
So as we develop this, we will we'll have 2 copies of it showing the top and the bottom, and maybe throw some neck plates in and stuff like that. It's a really old individual that has loads of pathologies. It's a very, very interesting specimen from that perspective.
Yeah. It's so cool to see it on display too. So I helped dig this thing up in 2017, and I remember the day that you found the skull. When you were digging, that was exciting.
Yeah, Jack Wilson was digging in that spot, and it looked like the top of a skull. It was like, well, that's what it looks like, and then he goes all the way around it, and yep, there it is, the cranium.
Yeah, shoot.
We were lucky because it was only like a foot in. It wasn't far from the edge of the cliff.
Right.
So if it had been left there, it probably would have been exposed and weathered by now. Certainly with how soft the rock is there, and it gets a lot of weathering. Like I say, the lower jaw was one of the first pieces we found, we think, but it was so damaged, all we could really tell that it was that it was ankylosaur. But so it looks like lower jaw. But you get what you get, and we certainly got a lot of that animal. Maud is what we call it.
Oh, you've got a nickname for it now.
Yeah, she's called Maud.
Maud?
Maud. She's called Maud.
So we had somebody just a second ago. Where is Denver from? As he doesn't sound American and slightly British, so I am confused.
Yeah, I'm originally from the north of England, but I've lived in America long enough that my accent is kind of smashed together with American.
Yeah. So when you go home, what do people say?
They think I sound American, but I'm not as bad as I used to be. I first lived in Rhode Island a while ago, and I got more of an accent then. Not much, but a bit. And it seems to have stabilized. But I still have some soft vowels and things.
We should have just said that you had a North Dakota accent and like.
North Dakota, eh?
Yeah. Anyways, we just got a raid recently too. So if anybody is here for the very first time, welcome to Paleontologizing. We're streaming from the Badlands Dinosaur Museum in Dickinson, North Dakota, and I'm here with museum curator Dr. Denver Fowler. So yeah. This has been so cool, Denver. Holy cow.
And of course, this is just the stuff that's on display, and a lot of this, we've been mostly going over new things, but I think we should look in the lab before the end of today, because tomorrow it's going to be pretty noisy in there.
Okay,
Of course, we can go in when it's noisy, but it's easier to talk when it's quiet.
Yeah, that'll be really cool.
Do you see B2, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's see Liberty as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
Liberty.
This is absolutely gorgeous. It's like,
It is one of the best Lambeosaurus skulls that's been collected, because
Just
a lot of the
astonishing.
time they're missing a bit here and there. This one is basically completely intact. The other side of it, the cheekbone, the back of the lower jaw, and things have moved. But on this side, which is actually the down side,
I figured,
this is the right side animal, it's intact. Ridiculous. I mean, all the teeth are there.
yeah.
You can see the bulging resonance chamber here. We've had the CT scan. We're waiting on some of the CT scans, and we may have to do it again. But we're interested in looking at the air passages through the nose area into the. This is actually the nose area.
Yeah.
And looking at that, because it's so beautiful. And it actually has an articulated neck that goes with it down to here.
Oh, man.
This was that specimen we were talking about before that's on the front of the lactation pod with the American flag over the crest. So it's the only Lambeosaurus ever collected from the United States. There are some Lambeosaurines from the Two Medicine Formation and a few other places. But this is the only one of its particular kind. And that's because it comes from rocks that are actually mostly in Canada, the Dinosaur Park Formation. But there are small parts of the Dinosaur Park Formation that sort of nose down into the Havre area, and they were previously called Judith River Formation. And this is quite controversial. You'd be surprised how controversial it is. But basically, I would say the Judith River and the Old Man Formation are the same rock unit, but the Dinosaur Park is a different unit. Just the depositional environment. And this is the Dinosaur Park. So it's the only one from Montana, the only one from the United States.
Yeah.
And it's got skin, not on the skull, but it's got lots of skin on the body, all the way down the leg, over the hips, around the shoulder region, loads and loads of skin. What's cool about the skin of Lambeosaurus is that it's kind of warty. It looks like a toad. It's got lots and lots of little scales. Like often when you see hadrosaurs, you're dealing more with the hadrosaurines, these different, they have more flat crests, or they don't have a crest at all, things like Edmontosaurus. And hadrosaurine skin has lots of different scale sizes, and they form like little rosette patterns. Things like doilies on the skin. And so they're actually more ornate looking skin to hadrosaurs, hadrosaurines. But the Lambeosaur skin that we have on this one, lots and lots of little scales, warty like a toad. And I make it sound horrible, but I love toads. But anyway, yeah, it's quite weird to look at. And when the first piece of it was found a couple of years ago, I just got shown. I thought, oh, that looks like the impression of a crocodile scute from underneath, or a piece of turtle shell with all little pimples. And I said, oh, what's the other side look like? And she says, just the same. I was like, what does that mean? So I go over there, and it's basically a skin impression with part and counterpart. It wasn't just the matrix that was pulled off a pimply or pocketed turtle shell. So this thing made me hate field work. I have to say, like, I was sick of digging this thing up last summer because it's chaos. Because there's skin, but it's not next to a bone. So you're trying to go round the bones or round the fossil, and the bones you can see because they're hard and brown. You can follow them; they're predictable. But the skin is just wherever it wants to be, and there's wrinkles of skin. We think we've got the pads from around the foot. We have a partially articulated foot, but we've got another part of what looks to be a foot where the foot bones have all moved. So this thing's lying on its right-hand side. Probably like this, and like you've got like both feet there, but then the bones of this foot have all washed away, but the skin's left stuck in the mud. So it's just unpredictable anarchy. And
You've always got to be careful because you don't want to dig through the skin or anything.
Right, and once you've exposed it,
It sounds
what
like
you do, like, if you put glue on it, then you alter the chemical signature of the skin
Yeah.
for certain studies. So the best thing to do is to avoid digging it up at all, unless you want to expose it for these chemical analyses. And then to make matters worse, the pelvis and the base of the tail were obliterated by a sinkhole. And so this water that shot through that area and jumbled up the bone and destroyed the skin, and the water seeps into the rock around it, which makes it softer. Oh, I hated that site so much. It drive me mad. But it's a wonderful specimen, and the layer that it comes from is a mass bone bed of multiple species. So we have other duckbills, we have more or less everything other than tyrannosaurs in this bone bed. We have what's probably the most complete pterosaur from Montana, and one of the most complete pterosaurs from the Cretaceous of North America from this site, and we're still pulling more of it out. There's a troodontid raptor, there's an oviraptorid, there's bird material, there's baby dinosaurs, complete skulls of turtles and crocodiles, and partial skulls of other crocodiles, and it's ridiculous.
And there's a site, that's a site that you're continuing to work this next summer too. Like, you're going to be going back out there.
People will be working this site until long after I'm dead, I'm sure. Especially if I die soon.
Let's hope not.
We plan on working for this for like, I'd say 20 years, I imagine. Because it's when you work in a bone bed that's all one species, like we have another bone bed with brachiosaurus. Whereas at this site, everything is different. Like we have a Lambeosaurus, we have what looks to be a Saurolophus or something like that on the other side. We have, like I say, crocodiles and turtles and raptors and pterosaur, and it's coming out over 50 meters and it's producing on both ends of the site. So it's just tons and tons of bone. Of very high quality. It's brittle, and you've got to be very careful with the fine stuff. But we've gotten quite good at spotting it and then basically going round it and letting all the prep be done in the lab. And as you'll meet Deanna tomorrow, she's our contractor, and then we have Steve as our full-time preparator. And Deanna's right now cleaning up these pterosaur bones and raptors and all the weird little delicate things from this site.
I guess our signal dropped out for a minute there, but I think that's probably just the satellite dish. But yeah, we had a question. Is it common to find fossils that are not worth displaying or are so bad that they amount to so little value? We try not to collect those if we can. It depends.
And that's a very good question. That the challenge when you're prospecting is, when is a site worth digging? You find a lot of bone, so you've got to be able to identify what it is. Is it a rare animal? Is it a rare bone from an animal? Is it going to tell me something new? So you have to kind of know what we already know, what's been published, and what's going to tell us something new. And yeah, we find a lot of bone that might not tell us something new. And then you're like, do I collect it? Is it a beautiful bone? It costs money to store fossils in museum cabinets, and it costs money to pay people to look after them and those sorts of things. So if it's a fragment of something not going to tell us something much, we might leave it. At a bone bed like this, we tend to collect everything, unless it's absolutely shattered and no good at all. We tend to collect everything because it records a whole fauna. So there's a lot of different things to consider when you're looking at that, but it's really key to be able to identify bones from fragments and to know what's important. People in Arizona. And they're very happy with that. And it's like, great, I'm very happy because our material gets studied and published. And that's great. Like, I know that there are turtle people who want to work on that kind of thing. And they're beautiful little fossils.
I mean, it kind of emphasizes the point that, like, you know, this is a collective enterprise doing science like this, and we all benefit from the collection of fossils and being able to share them with each other. And yeah, it's cool how we're able to share these things, because no one person can do all of this stuff.
So, yeah. Not just like on a single field crew, but paleontologists in general. We all benefit when we can find fossils and share them with one another and compare them and all that stuff. So.
Oh yeah, I'm very keen on getting all the things that we find published as well.
Yeah.
Well, most of the descriptions are being done by students or people on our field crew and that kind of thing. Because I think you need to give people the opportunity to work on good things, publishable things. And I tend to work. There's a few things I work on. Like I do work on theropod feet, and I work on ceratopsians. But a lot of the other taxa I let other people work on and guide those projects.
One of the really cool things about this museum is that you and the other folks here have been able to turn this into kind of an incubator for young paleontologists. I talk about this concept sometimes where like you have places like ashfall fossil beds in Nebraska or petrified forest or places like that where they have like an internship program, and there are a lot of people who early on in their career they go through those programs and they come out as fledgling paleontologists, and you're kind of building the same thing here, and that's really cool. It's helping like establish the future of fossil science in a way.
I appreciate that. We are trying. I don't know how how big of an impact we have because we're relatively small, but we do have the summer internship, and that is specifically crafted. A lot of internships, you do the same thing as the person who came the year before.
Yeah.
And you run the program the way they want it to be done. When our internship is quite open, so it's 50% dealing with the public, and you can run programs. You can just be out on the floor talking to people all day, or half the day, I should say. We've had interns who want to do that. Other interns have wanted to do particular education programs. You can design it and make it as you like, and then the other 50% is kind of other museum stuff that you want to do. So if you want to do all speaking to the public, you can spend your whole time talking to them. That's great. Sometimes we've had people who wanted to learn prep and do some prep or work in collections, that kind of thing. Get to sit at my desk because I'm not here in the summer. And it gets very cramped back there. But we've had always great interns. I think we've had like 6 now. I think maybe 5. And we've the job is open right now. It's open for another, not long, maybe another week. And then I go through the applications. We always have great people. And then in the field work, again, we're a big field program, but we're also one of the only open ones. Like most field programs are not open and not free. So we take applicants and just teach people how to dig up dinosaurs and how to
do it correctly too.
How to put up a tent. How to survive in a field. Or not survive. Last year they survived, but there was a tornado that came and shook the crew tent. Apparently, I wasn't there. But so it bent all the poles, and they had to buy some new poles. But that was quite interesting. I mean, that happens everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've been in some pretty bad storms. Hell Creek 2015, when your tent got shredded, it just looked like it got machine gunned by that hail.
The tent getting shredded was the least of the worries with that.
Yeah.
That was it was the one that blasted the wing mirror off your Jeep and sent it flying across camp.
Not a Jeep, a Suzuki Samurai, but yeah.
A Suzuki Jeep. Don't get Danny started on Jeep drivers.
That's a story for another time, But, anyway. No, that storm was, remember we went into town and the headline on the newspaper, it just showed like a collapsed barn and the headline across it, destruction,
I don't remember that.
You don't? I took a picture of it. It was...
It's probably been blocked out of my mind.
But there were like trains that got blown off their tracks and barns that got imploded and people were spotting tornadoes at night. And
we had quarter-sized hail in camp. It was serious.
Yeah.
Put little dings in all the trucks and everything.
Yeah. Well, should we take a look at tyrannosaurs here?
Sure.
Holy cow, yeah. There you go. This is a holotype, which is super, super exciting. It's really neat that at a museum of this size, you've already got holotype specimens on display that were just published, like a few years ago. This is really neat. Tell us about the specimen.
well, talking about holotypes and having things on display, like
Yeah.
when I got here, we were doing a little bit of field work, but my director, Bob, like, he's really followed like what I suggested. I said, like, you know, we've got nice fossils here, but we need new things. And so we go out and find new things, and it'll build the museum, it'll build the exhibit, it'll build a prestige. And he's really supported that. And so we have this, you know, the biggest field program in the North. And we're finding cool stuff. And this is not one of the first things. It's one of the first sites we found, but it's one of the first big things that we've had described. And it's the holotype of Daspletosaurus wilsoni. And it's we got kind of lucky with this. We did see, it was in 2017 we came to this new area, and literally over the space of a week and a bit prospecting, we found 4 tyrannosaurs. We found an articulated duckbill every day at least, and so many other things too.
So this is 2017. This is the same. It was like the same few days that Liz and I were trying to crack that hadrosaur arm off of the block.
Yeah.
You and Jack Wilson were out prospecting, and I think there was one day you found 3 different tyrannosaurs in one day. It was something crazy like that. It was at least 2.
Definitely 2, but
Yeah.
possibly 3. It depends on. Well, I was at Denver's Tyranno, and Jack was looking for one for himself and found one, and then found another one further up the hill. I just don't remember if that was the same day or not, but it's very close. But this was one that was found towards the end of our time in 2017. And Jack Wilson's looking at the cliff, and there sticking out the cliff is this bone.
Premax?
Maybe from the other side, actually. We have both premaxes. But anyway, you could see what was definitely the midline suture of the premaxilla. And nothing else looks quite like the midline suture of a premax. It's completely flat.
Very distinct.
There's very few flat surfaces like that you get, and it has a so did this.
Long-term viewers of this channel are very familiar with B-Rex. We talk about that all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dug like, I don't know how many, 40 feet or something crazy.
Yeah.
They spent 2 years doing overburden on that site. So this site was right at the bottom of a big cliff, and it would have taken a lot of work to expose what was there. So we went away and we dug up Denver's Tyranno and a couple of other sites. And then we went back here in 2020, I think, maybe 2019, and looked over the site, and we found more skull bones on the surface, actually. Not the jaws, but we got the jugal, parts of the back of the skull. The ones that are grey there, they're grey because we've got them, the real ones, but they're on the other side. So most of what you can see in brown is all of what you can see in brown is the right side of the skull, and then the grey ones, we've got the left side. So we've scanned them, mirrored them, and printed them out.
Nice.
So I'm currently printing out a complete skull of this animal. I've got the lower jaws done already.
Nice.
And we're making a complete one that will have a complete restoration next to this by the summer. And we dug in. We went back there. We dug in the first time. We took out about 10 feet of overburden in a small area. We found the jaws. We found more of the postcrania. This thing was very spread out. It was very spread out, and there was scatterings of broken vertebrae and stuff on the surface that had been destroyed over the last few hundred years. So we didn't get all that much of the skeleton. We got 4 neck vertebrae, a couple of ribs, parts of the pelvis, and some parts of the tail, and 1 metatarsal, 1 toe bone. But we got the skull, and the skull is the most diagnostic part.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is where it fits in time, based on some of the ceratopsian fossils we have, and also based on knowing about when the sea level was going up and down, and when the seaway was basically going east and west. This is collected from the time when the sea was the furthest to the east that it ever got in the Campanian. 76 million years
So
ago.
it receded as far as it would go.
Yeah, and then it starts to come back. So we know that this is older, for example, than the Dinosaur Park Formation in Canada,
Right.
because that's when the sea was rising and coming back. And so we think it basically fits in the time gap between the classic Old Man and Dinosaur Park in Canada, and that makes sense relative to what we call the sequence stratigraphy, the sediments relationship with sea level.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that in terms of the dinosaurs is that this represents a time slice that isn't there in the classic place in Canada. And this Daspletosaurus specimen looks very, very similar to Daspletosaurus turosus, but it's just ever so slightly different, and it shares some features with a later species called Daspletosaurus horneri. And that puts it basically in between the two, and it's in between the two in terms of time as well.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of what you see in this diagram here. Here's turosus, this is wilsoni, and this is horneri. So it's most similar to turosus, but it's just a little bit more evolved.
Yeah.
So we think that this is basically a population of tyrannosaurs living in northern Montana and in southern Alberta, and they're evolving through time. And there's just subtle differences in the crests and some of the other features. But it's interesting because it supports the idea that Daspletosaurus is evolving by anagenesis. So
Right.
it's linear evolution. It's not branching. It's just one population changing these sexual display characters on the face. More interestingly, when this thing, when we were analyzing it, is that when you include all of the characters of horneri, actually Daspletosaurus jumps back to be basically a stem taxon on the way to tyrannosaurines, things like Tyrannosaurus rex, which suggests that Daspletosaurus might actually be the ancestor of T-Rex. And the reason why that wasn't really a supported hypothesis at the time was because there were some characters that united horneri, the last Daspletosaurus, with later occurring things like Tyrannosaurus and stuff, but they'd been removed from the analysis, so they weren't actually making those connections that had been there before. So that's all very controversial, and you can read lots of papers about that kind of thing. And I don't really do tyrannosaurs. That's Elias's work. So, like he was helping us dig this specimen up, and I realized he was never going to see any bone. He was just going to be doing overburden, and I felt kind of sorry for him. He was telling me about sorry, I mean, make it sound like I'm just like it's all through pity. He was telling me lots about his work on tyrannosaurs and how he was really interested in them, and I thought, well, he knows more about this than I do. So I asked him if he wanted to describe the specimen, and I figured he'd do it way faster and better than me. So he very quickly got the description together, and we had all the fossils prepped, and it got described. I didn't say, name it as a new species or anything. I basically left it open. It's like, describe the specimen and figure out what it is.
Right.
And anyway, that's where we got to where we are today.
Very
so it's
cool.
a really big Daspletosaurus.
I can't wait to see the full 3D printed skull. That's going to be really something. Really show off the size of it too.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited by that. We have another one which we're going to get reconstructed, which is a little bit smaller than this, called Holger, but we're still digging that one up.
So that's the nickname for the specimen is Holger. That's the site name?
Yeah, it's called Jack's Tyranno, but as they were digging it up, there were a couple of volunteers from Denmark, and they came up with the name Holger because it's kind of a Danish folk hero.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a fun name for it. This one we call Sisyphus.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the enormous hole that we had to dig.
Just felt like rolling a boulder up a hill and having it
Yeah,
tumble
well,
back down.
in 2020, I think it was, or maybe it was 2019, when we dug the biggest amount of
Beautiful.
If you look very carefully at this, you can see the abscess. So if you look at the very back of the upper jaw, there's like a lump that fills in one of the tooth sockets. And when I was cleaning this, because I cleaned this, I thought like, is that bone or is that rock? Because it's very porous and weird looking. And I saw a little bit of the broken surface, and it's like, no, that is bone. That's an abscess filling in the tooth socket. So that's being described by Destiny Wolf, who's one of our board members and one of the volunteers in the lab. And she actually has a medical background, she has a nursing background, and we're also working with a dentist in town as well who has a dental background. And we like our pathologies anyway because they tell you about the life of the animal.
Yeah.
So that's actually really cool. And there's a number of other features about this skull which seem unusual that we're going to describe in that pathology paper. So Destiny's kind of working on that right now.
Very cool. We had a question in the chat. Let's see. It was about Tyrannosaurus macraensis. With a 2 million year gap of time estimates between Daspletosaurus and Tyrannosaurus macraensis, were they linked? Could you? We just need to find a specimen that bridges them. Yeah.
Well, this is where it's interesting. Like macraensis, the problem is there's not that much of it.
Yeah.
Now, if someone goes down there and finds some more material from that formation, then that will help immediately. Because I mean, right now, what is it? Dentary? Is that all there is? There's not much.
I want to say there's a couple other pieces, but yeah, it's pretty sparse.
Yeah, I mean, so even if we've got dentaries, we've got all we can compare with macraensis. That's the thing. So we need like postorbitals and other parts of the skull that we can really make those comparisons. But I mean, I'm very much into looking at units that have a different age slightly and seeing how the dinosaurs are different and what that means.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with macraensis as it stands. I'm not a tyrannosaur person, so I will say that though. The interesting thing is, like, I work on ceratopsians, and the pattern of evolution for ceratopsians, I think, is related to the rise of sea level and cutting off populations. And if you read the paper that Liz and I published in 2021, I think, describing Navajo ceratops and things from New Mexico, we talk about that hypothesis, and then we show some nice diagrams in the recent paper we did on Coelaceratops, which Danny Barrera was the first author of. And talking about Mexico's contribution to that hypothesis. And so these sea level changes are cutting off populations. So Daspletosaurus is from before some of those late sea level rise events. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like Daspletosaurus may be spread across the whole United States and Canada, and then maybe it could get cut off into a northern and southern subpopulation. And I think that certainly happens with the Chasmosaurines. That a southern population evolves into a Rhinoceratops and a northern population evolves into Anchiceratops. And so even though this might be an ancestral form to multiple lineages later in the Cretaceous, there's a lot of speculation there, and it's just like, well, if the pattern of Tyrannosaurs follows the pattern of Chasmosaurine ceratopsians, then we might expect to see that. But right now, there's not enough evidence. But it's always good to keep these ideas in mind because it's not surprising if you see the same kinds of patterns. These are big animals, and if there's one thing Daspletosaurus likes to do, it's eat Chasmosaurines. So wherever the Chasmosaurines go, Daspletosaurus follows, and you may expect, therefore, to see similar patterns of divergence if they're caused by populations being cut off, etc.
Yeah. Very cool. Shoot.
I know, it's really exciting just what you're looking at, like, I don't know. I feel like up until the past couple decades, it was more difficult to really think about dinosaur lineages evolving over time in Western North America. Nowadays, like, we've actually got enough specimens and a good enough understanding of how old these different basins are that the picture starts to become clear and you can actually start talking about linear evolution. Whereas beforehand, it's just, you've got a dinosaur here, dinosaur there. We're not totally sure how old they are. It's just kind of scattershot, like, there they are.
Well, I think part of the problem is that we went too far the wrong way, that the idea of anagenesis and cladogenesis have been around for a long time, and that getting into the sort of early 80s through to the 1990s, people started saying you can't even say anagenesis, you can only say cladogenesis. But they're opposite sides of the same coin. And when we find new morphologies, they're new morphologies that evolved by one way or the other. And cladogenesis ultimately is the dividing of a population into two populations. So you have to have both existing at the same time.
Right.
Whereas anagenesis is one population that evolves over time. So you can test the hypothesis by, do you have a bunch of stacked morphologies or do you have morphologies that live side by side? Cladogenesis, you can't falsify that hypothesis. It's always possible. Anagenesis is a good hypothesis because you can show that it's not true.
Right.
So we should entertain both hypotheses. And I get a bit of a reputation of saying anagenesis all the time, and that's true, but that's because people were saying you couldn't say it at all before. It's like people used to say, Jack Horner, everything's ontogeny. It's like, well, the thing is, before, people weren't thinking of ontogeny. So when you start thinking of ontogeny, it begins to explain all kinds of things that didn't make any sense before.
Right.
And anagenesis is the same. It's like people were not allowed to say the A word at conferences up until in 2009. I said to John, I said, we're going to say the A word in our talk today, in anagenesis. And you could hear the cladist gasp in the room. But it helps to explain some of the patterns that we see, and it brings out some of the important moments, like when these populations do get cut off. There is some evidence for differentiation amongst northern and southern populations, but it's nowhere near as severe as has been presented in the past. But the vestiges of these northern and southern cladogenic events caused by high sea level, I think, are then present later in time. And that's what we're really observing. We're observing the echoes of speciation in the later Campanian into the Maastrichtian. And we can track that sort of thing because we can see sea level. And yes, we get more precise ash dates and we get more high-resolution biostratigraphy from both invertebrate fossils and from dinosaurs and mammals and all sorts of vertebrate fossils. And as all that stuff starts to come together, which is a large part of what I do, the patterns start to come out. They don't look so chaotic anymore.
Right.
I find it super interesting. That's the reason why I get other people to describe all these things, because I'm more interested in these big patterns and
What are these
and
lineages
behavior.
doing over tens of millions of years? Yeah.
Yeah, and we can target collecting to places that we see where there are gaps. If once you start plotting all these things, you're like, well, no one's ever found a tyrannosaur from 69 million years ago, or they probably look a bit different. So then up pops Macraensis,
Right.
or some of the other stuff from the south. And is it a surprise that animals that are 2 million years older look a bit different? It's no surprise at all.
No.
And it's, we do need to look at the anatomy more, and we need to have more specimens and more complete specimens, but all those parts start to feed in. And some things that we think are correct today are going to be incorrect. It's going to be, actually, it was an ontogenetic thing, or it was just crushed,
Sure.
or all sorts of other things, or it was just weird.
Individual variation.
Yeah, individual variation. A lot of it, you're going to find that out. But other things are probably going to stick, and we're going to get a better understanding as a result.
We had a question that I want to paraphrase here a little bit. Oh, hang on. Is why do we have all of those emotes? I think we're okay. I could listen to Danny in Denver for hours, says Care Bear Bonfire. Thank you. And then somebody says, uh-oh, wait, hang on. Did the signal cut out? People say, uh-oh, I don't know what they mean. You got to be more specific with what you're saying, everybody. Anywho, we had a question about your background and how you first got into paleontology in the first place. Were you always interested in fossils? What was kind of your path into paleo?
I always liked animals. I liked toads and frogs. I had a pond when I was a kid, and I used to go out and catch them and measure them and give them all names and things. And then when I was 4 or 5 years old, I think 5, it was a different time, and all the kids would just run randomly all over the beach. And we were on holiday in the south of England, and we found, we were all running all over the beach. And I found a big ammonite in a big rock.
Oh.
And, the impression of one. And it took me half an hour to drag it back to my parents on the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they saw me at a distance pulling this big rock, but they didn't come and help. But anyway, this is nice.
They're on vacation, right?
It was in Amaltheus, I think. It was near Weymouth. And it's just the impression, but I thought it was amazing
Yeah.
as a kid. And my dad would take us fossil hunting basically almost every year. We'd go on holiday somewhere and we'd spend at least a day fossil hunting. And then that turned into a real hobby, and we'd go on special fossil hunting holidays where we'd spend a week. All sorts of places. We went to Scotland, looked for trilobites, and
cool.
graptolites. We went to a lot of time in the south coast and Yorkshire coast collecting ammonites and all sorts of things. And I basically got into it through collecting. And once you've collected lots of ammonites and things, the last thing you're left with are vertebrate fossils.
Yeah.
So I when I was a college student, we'd collected in the Isle of Wight every year for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And I had a bit of time in the summer, and my parents said, you either get a job or you do something worthwhile. So I volunteered at Dinosaur Farm Museum on the Isle of Wight.
Nice.
And I was cleaning up fossils and piecing together things, and I'd go out and collect fossils when we weren't open. So that's how I got into it, and basically from there, tried to get into graduate programs, PhD programs, and eventually got through there. So that's my background. I'm not like someone who saw a movie or I got into it in college. I was always collecting fossils, and I'm not just someone who likes dinosaurs.
Yeah.
I love my ammonites right, and things like that too. Like all fossils are so important for different things, and you need to be able to identify everything, basically.
Yeah. How did you end up in the U.S.?
I did my master's degree in Bristol, and then I'd come over to do a PhD, and actually I ended up in a couple of different places for different reasons. But America is the place to be if you want to work on dinosaurs. Big patterns and big picture stuff. I mean, Britain has a great fossil record and a great history of fossil collecting and things as well. But ultimately, it's small, and like I can say, I wonder what this dinosaur looks like if I move 300 miles downstream. I can do that in America.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of hypothesis testing you can really only do in these kinds of systems. And the background data is so good for the Western Interior. Ash dates, ammonite dates, all these different kinds of dating the rocks.
Yeah,
the
pollen.
environment, everything. It's all there. And if you want to look at these big behavior questions and evolutionary questions, this is the place to do it. So everyone's always lucky. I think anyone who gets into these sorts of positions is always lucky. You've got to have a little bit of luck, and you've got to know some of the right people. And I've always volunteered at lots of museums, and I've been on different people's field crews, and people like Bob Sullivan, and of course Jack Horner was my supervisor. And I came out and I was volunteering on Liz's crew. That's when I met Jack, and he said I should apply to be his grad student, because I showed him all the strat work I was doing and all the mapping of sites. I was very into taphonomy, mapping all the bone maps and things. And just get stuck in and get a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
That's how I got into it all.
That's good advice. Yeah.
I say I don't give good advice. I've done everything wrong at least once. So I know a lot of what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Some things to avoid. I mean, I haven't had a traditional path by any means, I don't think.
I haven't either.
No, but all these sorts of things like all this tech, podcasting, all this kind of information,
live streaming,
technology, and I built a lot of things. I found a lot of fossils and all these weird skills. Like when you're running a museum, especially a small museum, you do a bit of everything. And like I've used so many of those skills, whether it's the woodworking and stuff that my dad used to do, or I used to work in television, and sort of getting an eye for eye-catching things, or interesting turns of phrase. And it's
when you said you used to work in television too, do you want to talk about that, Prehistoric Park?
I'm not turning it into a story about me. I was the researcher for Prehistoric Park, and so I...
Here, let's stand in front of the Albertosaur too, so we've got a cool background. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the specialist researcher for Prehistoric Park, so that was made by Impossible Pictures.
That's the one with Nigel Marven, right?
Yeah. And Impossible Pictures was the producers who made Walking with Dinosaurs for the BBC, so it was Jasper James and Tim Haynes. Tim Haynes, the person who came up with the idea of Walking with Dinosaurs. And so Jasper hired me as the specialist researcher for Prehistoric Park. So I did a lot of writing for it, actually. I would write basic scripts and basic storylines, and then the producers would come in for each individual episode and either stick with it or they'd adapt a lot of parts of it. So I wrote a lot of the scenes and some of the general order of things for quite a lot of the episodes. And I'd consult with scientists and get all the models made. I'd consult with the artists. I didn't make the models, but I did come up with some color schemes and things like that. And that was like 11 months I worked on that project.
Nice.
And,
When did that come out? Around what year?
I think the show came out 2006, maybe 2007.
Yeah.
I was working on it 2005. So
We've got some prehistoric park fans in the chat right now. Yeah.
oh yeah, some of the things that happen in prehistoric park, like at the end where the I think the terror birds are taking dust baths and then they all escape because they undermined the wire of the fence. That actually is what our chickens did in our yard when I was a kid. They were taking dust baths around the chicken coop, and they basically burrow. They don't burrow, but they make these big holes in the dirt, and then that undermined the wire, and they just get out in the garden and cause havoc. So there's little things like that.
Yeah.
And I wrote the scene where the Triceratops were locking horns and fighting with Nigel. That one they really liked. It's a few other things like that.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of it.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, but those sorts of skills you see, like guiding a sculpt and knowing the kinds of mistakes that get made. And really, it's not about like saying, don't make this mistake. It's more like some mistakes you can make and they're easy to correct.
Yeah.
Others become fundamental to the sculpt and say like, you've got to get certain things right to begin with because you can't tweak them later.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then it really becomes important when you're doing that kind of thing. It's
Oh, he's turning off the lights in the museum. Streaming for a while. This is great.
Yeah, you can stream. I mean, they'll just go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can turn the lights off. That's easy. Yeah.
But yeah. Do you want to take a look at the lab like we were talking about?
Yeah, we can go in the lab and just have a quick look because it's quiet right now. Tomorrow, all the fans and the buzzing noises will be on.
I gotta readjust my arm strap too.
I promise you, those are dinosaur eggs.
There we go. Yeah, neat.
Yeah, we've got an egg site. There's actually a bunch of eggs in the area, but we've got an egg site that we came across. It was a microsite, and then Deanna comes up to me and she says, "Oh, I've got this little vertebra." And I look at it, and it's a hatchling hadrosaur vertebra. And I'm like, that is a baby dinosaur vertebra. Go and see if there's some more. So she did, and she found like 3 or 4 more. And so I go and look at where the horizon is that she's looking, and there's a bunch of eggshell coming out, and I find some more vertebrae and baby bones. And so we got a whole load of embryo bones and eggs and eggshell coming out of this horizon. And there's actually some burrows that may be mammal burrows and all sorts of other stuff going on there.
Cool.
And that's Steve and Deanna's research project.
Yeah.
So that's what they're working on.
Embryonic bones there. Very cool.
Yeah, there's not many bones there, but those are all from the first bit that we found. Like we've got quite a few more now. No skull bones that we recognize as yet, but it's probably a site that was used over a number of years just because there's bones at different, there's eggs at different levels. And we like to get some of the latest stuff out in this box as soon as we can, so it's not like a finished exhibit. It's like we shove it there and then do something nicer out.
All right.
Lab.
Here's the lab. It will get bigger, and tomorrow it'll be full of Steve and Deanna cleaning things, but this block is the Tyrannosaur block. So this is Denver's
Look at
Tyranno.
that. Oh man.
So that tail that we saw before, one end fits on here, so that's the end of the tail. And it loops all the way around and it connects up here. So there was a natural crack here. We didn't break it. It was already cracked where the tail came out. So we thought, well, that makes things a bit easier. And the other tail came out here. The other bit of the tail came out here. And it's a little bit more disarticulated than we'd hoped, but it's all kind of in the right place. And we're looking at it upside down. So this is the underside. This is the hip. That's the hip socket.
That's where the femur fits in right there. Acetabular.
These are dorsal ribs, so these are ribs from the main body. This is actually the neck here. So these are neck ribs.
Yeah,
Those are
that's
articulated neck ribs. There's 1, 2, 3 articulated neck ribs. So the neck comes around here, plunges down, and we think bends back. If the head is here, it'll be under there. The trouble is there's a bunch of articulated ribs there.
So you can't go through very fast. Got to be really careful around
Right,
those
we're
ribs.
going to have to go around those ribs, and we figure it out as we go. We'll probably end up removing a rib or two, something like that. Very biblical. And and make way into there. These are the dorsal vertebrae, so they're the middle of the back. They're the tips of them. So they're kind of there. So this thing is curled up like in a ball. The tail comes out here. We've got the feet were sticking out that bottom end. And all the belly ribs and things are in this region. We can get a little bit more into this specimen tomorrow with all the stuff that's in the drawers and collections. But yeah, this thing weighed, it's in a large heavy concretion that weighs 9,000 pounds or 9,600 pounds, I think.
Over 9,000 pounds. Wow.
And then we did 1,000 pounds of steel. We actually helicoptered this out. We built a steel frame that we carried to the site and then built it over the top of the concretion. The concretion was solid. It didn't need to be jacketed. It would hold together, but it needed to be lifted out as like a, almost like in a saddle. I have a little model of it somewhere. So we took the frame out in sections, bolted it all together over the top. We got a couple of grants to pay for a Chinook helicopter to helicopter it out. And
That's one of these massive double rotor military helicopters. CH-47, I think?
yeah, it's the heaviest lifting helicopter you can get. So that was amazing. It all worked, but it was, you know, you're sitting there worrying the whole time.
Yeah.
But it all worked fine, and then it got brought back to Dickinson. The heavy lifting, the heavy duty trailer blew a tire, 2 tires on the way back. But
Oh, man.
it was all right because it had lots of tires. You know,
Yeah.
it's a heavy one, but one of them had blown. And then this thing was flipped over by Two's Construction in town, and this frame, and it was put underneath so that we could basically display it on that frame to support it. And we removed one length of it so it would fit through the doors. Everything was calculated beforehand, and we figured it should work, and it did. The frame was super strong. It was just the right size. But, you know, you're always expecting something to go wrong.
Yep. It's like when I was setting up the stream today. It's like, it's going to work with the satellite internet and the mesh router and everything, but
Here we are. Sometimes things come together, and it's the more you plan and the more clever people you have working on it.
the higher likelihood it is that it'll actually work.
I mean, one of the things that did go wrong is that we had a GoPro camera attached to the frame for the lift, but I pressed it one too many times and it switched off. So we got footage of us going, all right, let's set it going, boop, off.
That's why it's important to have one superfluous part so that something can go wrong and it won't matter, you know?
Yeah, but you know, all the lift and everything was fine. It looked spectacular, and so that was good. And the same helicopter lifted out another Tyrannosaur that we had as well. It's nowhere near as good. It's mostly fragmentary, but there's a few nice bits. So anyway, that's the big.
Yeah.
Steve lies on top. That's why it's got all of these little cushions and stuff. So I think this is Bobby's old mattress from his apartment before he moved. So yeah, he lies on top of here and cuts down through here using Zoic air chisels.
So we'll get to see that tomorrow. He'll be working on the specimen probably, right?
Maybe working on something tomorrow.
Yeah.
At the moment, he's cleaning up a turtle, which I guess we'll look at tomorrow.
Cool.
This is more of the hadrosaur, lambeosaur, Jack's lambeo.
Nice.
There's some bone there you can see.
Is this Liberty or a different one?
This is Liberty.
Nice.
This
Yeah.
is where the rock likes to break transverse across and through bone. So we use air chisels in the field for this site, which is not typical.
Yeah.
But it means that we can control how the rock breaks because it likes to do this. Partly because it's near the edge of the cliff, and because all this water has gone through the rock, it's not as strong as the same layer in other places.
Right.
But you know, we mitigated for that very quickly, and obviously the skull and everything came out perfect. But it's just another reason to hate that site. Skin, water, fractures, everything about it is just incredibly annoying.
Jeez.
So, yeah, otherwise this is where Deanna works. She's our contractor, and some of the things, I don't know which one that one is. Most of the pterosaur stuff that she's been working on recently is next door in collections. That is, this is pretty nasty. This is the nastiest bone from this site, but this was the first one that we found. This was at the edge of the cliff. So this is...
And the most eroded.
Is that part of the pelvis?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is one of the ilia from our new nodosaur.
Oh, nice.
So we've actually, this one was at the edge of the cliff, and someone else had already put a part of a jacket on it many years ago. It was all kind of crusty and nasty, and it had a texture on it, so we thought, oh, is this ceratopsian frill? But then we recognized the texture as being nodosaur. And then Bobby Ebelhart really likes ankylosaurs, so I invited him to dig it up last year. And he started on the site, and then Steve took over. So when we dug in, we found the sacrum, and we found the other ilium, and there's like a leg underneath, and some vertebrae and ribs and things, so we'll hopefully dig up some more of it this coming year. But this is the first piece. The rest of it looks beautiful. This looks nasty. So this is just about consolidate, and then we'll just put it in a drawer. And it is what it is, but it's the first piece that was found. And the rest of it is much, much nicer. There's a few bits of armor as well.
So stratigraphically, you would expect this to be a new taxon.
Nodosaurs are kind of interesting. This will be a nodosaur that's equivalent to the lower dinosaur park formation. And I'm not totally 100% on it, but I don't think there are any taxa named from that horizon.
Right.
They're mostly from high. I could be wrong on that. Certainly the teeth and things are very abundant. It comes from the same horizon as a Centrosaurus apertus specimen that we've collected, so we know the age of the relative age of the specimen. But, right now it's a pelvis, a leg, and a few bits. So,
Nothing super diagnostic,
I mean...
Let's hope for a skull. Yeah,
let's hope for something, skull or armor plates from the neck and shoulder region, that kind of thing.
Some cervical rings,
It will hopefully add at least to our knowledge of ankylosaurs from like that time period, and especially because it's in Montana as well.
Very cool.
So, it turned out real nice, actually. I was very happy when they started uncovering the nice bones. I mean, on the surface it looks like this, and you think, if that's all we get, it's like, that's not going to win any beauty contests. But you can't impress kids with that. You're like, look at this, kids. Yeah. I want to go to McDonald's. But yeah, the rest of it's real nice. Really pretty looking bone.
Nice.
It's pretty good.
Well, I'm excited to take a look around here tomorrow when some work is going on and be able to talk to Steve. And you said Deanna's going to be here too?
She should be.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we've been going for, it's like over 3 hours at this point. Go ahead and wrap it up, you think?
It's up to you. I got to feed the cats.
Yeah.
But, if you want to see anything else, we'll be around these areas tomorrow.
Yeah.
We can go do a sneak run into the collections bit and say, look, some pterosaur bones.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
That sounds great.
People like pterosaurs.
Oh, yeah. So, pterosaurs, if any of you are not super familiar with Mesozoic critters, these are the pterodactyls from popular culture.
Oh, yeah, and you can get one of these, by the way.
Yeah, that's the Andrea Tuchin sculpt.
Daspletosaurus wilsoni bust here. You can get one of these from the merch shop, which now has an online shop. So there should be links to that in the chat if you use the commands.
Guess we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is birth of the Tyrannosaurus rex. It's one of the biggest T-Rex. It's only a leg, but it's very similar in size to Sue. I'm told it's a little bit bigger than Scotty, but not quite as big as Sue. Some people think Scotty is bigger than Sue.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't really do Tyrannosaurs, but some people are very excited about this specimen.
Don't have a horse in that fight.
It's not very well reconstructed, but it's from North Dakota, and it's one of the biggest T-Rexes known. And the important thing about it is, we've cut all 3 of the bones, so we have a really good growth record of this animal. And they didn't do that for the other really big ones.
Right.
So this is one of the only big T-Rex for which we have a complete growth record.
Nice.
Which obviously is important when you're big, because like,
Yeah.
you get big through growing fast? Did you live a long time? With a different growth speeds at different times? There's lots of different things that we can get from that growth record. And to do that, you really need to completely cut through the bone. Just a little core isn't going to cut it. Isn't going to do it. You really need to cut completely through.
So you've got that from the femur, the tib, and the fibula too?
Yep.
Wow.
The fibula actually isn't any use.
Uh-huh.
But so we cut it to compare the fibula with the tibia and the femur.
Right.
And that's one of the things. We're not doing that research. It's being done by Holly Woodward down in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And she says that, the fibula basically doesn't have the full growth record, or it's not as consistent as the tibia, and in this case, in theropods, the femur. So that's just something to confirm.
Yeah.
I believe they did cut through the fibula of Sue, but
Uh-huh.
there you go.
We got a question, how big would she have been? Probably like maybe close to 40 feet long, something like that.
Something like that. I mean, we don't have the vertebrae, so
Yeah.
we don't even really have a good idea how much tyrannosaurs would vary in length. I mean,
Yep.
some of the private specimens seem to suggest that they can have weird proportions, but maybe they're also chimeras and things like that.
If it's a commercial specimen, yeah, who knows?
But we don't know. But this is only a leg. And that's why I wasn't as excited about it to begin with, because it's just a leg. And I think, what can we do with a leg? Well, we can cut it. We can get full histologic record of it, full growth record, and really see what we can do with that. And the size of it was a bonus. So these are some of our new things.
Oh man, this is incredibly rare, chat. This is
a new
nuts.
pterosaur bone from Jack's bone bed. So we have multiple bones, probably from one individual, just because they're all size consistent, and it's not a big animal; it's a smallish animal. So that one's a nice wing bone. I don't know
This is
what
from
it
a flying reptile, pterodactyl in popular parlance.
This is part of another wing bone.
Incredibly thin.
Now, this is obviously a broken part. This is how it was preserved in the ground. So these very, very thin bones often break up. And this is a large wing bone that's basically just broken into shards. And you can see on the inside these ridges, those are the sort of spiraling, strengthening ridges that you get on the inside of pterosaur bones. Because they're so thin to make them light, they have all these structural supports on the inside.
Yeah.
Also, this is... that's another funny little pterosaur type bone. Somewhere in here. Because the stuff that Deanna's been cleaning. This is the end of a pterosaur bone.
Nice.
You can see how thin it is. So some of the smaller bones have been preserved complete, but many of the bigger bones are broken up before it was deposited. So this is what there was of it. But if you're going to find a bit, find the ends.
Yeah.
They're the good ones. And then this is my favorite of all. It's a baby Styracosaurus nose horn.
And why is it flat on that one side, Denver? Shouldn't it be round all the way around?
So yeah, it's flat because in centrosaurines, the nose horn is made of outgrowths of the nasals. And in young ones, the nasals haven't fused yet. So this is the left side of the nasals, and then the right side would have been a mirror on this side.
So you look at the left side of the nose horn right there.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So this is the midline.
So in chasmosaurines, they don't do this, though, right? It's just... They're not paired like that?
Short answer is no. Long answer, that's not actually ever been demonstrated.
Interesting.
In Triceratops, yeah, they have a separate epinasal, but I'm not convinced that's ever been demonstrated in more primitive chasmosaurines. Possibly in some of the latter Maastrichtian forms, but I don't think any of the Campanian forms that's been demonstrated.
So it sounds like there's a project there, potentially.
Yeah, it's another one of my projects. But that's why
Nice.
one of the reasons I'm so super excited to get that.
Yeah.
I've always seen them in books. There's not that many of them anyway, but when that was found this summer, it's like, oh my god, that's my favourite thing from the quarry. Ceratops is the best dinosaurs.
Very cool.
While
Holy
we're
cow.
here...
Oh, yeah. Oh, shoot, our crocodile person just left.
Oh,
But,
good. Look at that. You should have stayed.
And who is this?
This is probably Alberta Champsa.
Uh-huh.
And I believe there's only one other good Alberta Champsa skull known. and that's the holotype. So this might be only the second one of its kind.
Wow. I don't know. Erosion is both the best friend and the worst enemy of the field paleontologist.
Maybe tomorrow we'll get the UV flashlight out.
Yeah?
Most of this Judith River bone fluoresces. The teeth glow yellow or red.
Huh.
And the bone is like a low, sort of humming red, but the teeth can be weirdly red and yellow. They look like they've been painted with poster paint. It's a very strange color.
Interesting.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I can go ahead and wrap this up, I guess. Let's see. And they fluoresce. Yeah, maybe we'll get to see that tomorrow. We'll see. But, yeah, let me go over here and back into the lab where I know the signal is good. And we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Denver, thank you so much for this tour and everything. Really exciting stuff going on. How can people support the museum? Just give us a little pitch about that, in terms of donations, in terms of, volunteering in the lab, stuff like that?
Well, we're a small museum and we don't have many staff. And one of the things we get a lot of fossils dug up, as you'll see tomorrow. We have a lot of stuff in jackets that needs to be prepped. And so one of the big things I'm trying to fundraise for at the moment is preparator time. I've mentioned Deanna a few times, and she's a local contractor and we can hire her by the hour. So I've got a grant to pay for a few weeks worth of work, a few months worth of work with her. But if people would donate, they can donate an hour of her time, that kind of thing. So we have the throne.
Just
page,
put that together, yeah.
that Danny suggested we put together if people wanted to donate to the museum through either purchasing preparator time. You can just buy half an hour of Deanna's time, that kind of thing. Everything's really great. She's very fast and very good. And all these little pterosaur bones, a small jacket she can do in a day. She's very, very good indeed. She's been trained by Steve, who's here in the lab.
Nice.
He's very good as well, of course.
Because it's one of your big bottlenecks, basically, is you've got to get this stuff prepped, got to get it cleaned.
Right. My angle with writing some of the new grants is that we can do more field work and have more volunteers in the field producing more bones if we can get more of them cleaned in the lab. So I'm trying to find more volunteers to work in the lab. And so we have Throne, and then we have donation site on our website. And we've also got the shop that's come online recently.
Yep.
We've got t-shirts, and I'm hopefully going to get some more of our exclusive merchandise on there. And if people do want to buy something from the shop, note that you saw Danny's stream, and I'll sign a postcard, or I don't have to sign it if you don't want that. Well, I'll write you a little message or somewhere, or not, I can just chuck a postcard in there for you. But we've got a bunch of nice dinosaur postcards with some of the art pieces that you'll have seen on this tour, or photographs of the feathered models, that kind of thing. We've got those.
Of each, I don't know, we'll see.
Otherwise it's I'm really looking for preparator time, and I think Throne has some field equipment a little bit on there. We're mostly very economical in the field. So my field season, we spend $20,000 and we do 3 months, and we have 2 or 3 active crews, up to about 15 people in camp, and we feed all of our field crew. They're volunteers. They have to get to us, but we feed them, and we pay for their food, and we drive them out to the sites, and Yeah, we do very well, like 20 grand for 3 months. And, you know, that 20 grand over the last 8 years has got us these tyrannosaurs, the lambeosaurs, like, to buy one of those at an auction is many millions of dollars. So the value that we get. And we work on public land. These are all public specimens forever.
Yep.
From federal lands.
They belong to all of us, we the people,
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
they
that's
belong
important.
to America. So they'll always be in a public museum. If we close down, they have to go to another public museum. So it's really important to do things that way because it keeps these things available and visible to the public.
Yep.
And the more we get things clean, the faster we get things clean, the more we can get stuff out there.
Yep.
Recently, we've got a lot more stuff out there because we've hit a point where we've got the first things that we dug up are now ready to go. But there's always takes a few years for the big things to get fully done.
But if you want to speed up that process, check out the Throne wish list there. And yeah, if you feel like you want to contribute, you know, throw a few dollars this way and yeah, help get these dinosaurs on display and into the collections and yeah, make room for more new exciting dinosaurs.
So we are doing an expansion to the lab and collections and refurbishing the exhibit in the coming years. And I broached the subject that, you know, if there's a big donor out there who would like a museum named after them or
Yeah.
a hall in the museum named after them or a whole exhibit or something, those sorts of sponsorship opportunities are there. And we were already building this. Like we've got like some funding from the state and things to pay for it. But there's an opportunity to really do something special, like with these cool dinosaurs. And we'll show you some more stuff tomorrow. Like the pterosaur, I want to get that reconstructed.
Yeah,
I
that would be
like
so cool.
pterosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody loves pterosaurs. Yeah, yeah,
Maybe not fish.
fair. Or baby dinosaurs.
They're not too aware.
Yeah,
So, no, this
Yeah.
pterosaur's a cool little thing. We'll see some more of it tomorrow. And some of the raptor bones and all that other stuff that we got in collections.
nice.
They're coming together. But, you know, they're fragmentary right now, but pieces almost every day
Yeah.
are getting cleaned up.
Maybe we can take a look at Danny Ceratops tomorrow too. Would that be?
Yeah.
okay?
Who's that named after?
Oh, I wonder. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah, we'll show you some of the cool things that we got in all these drawers. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some good stories. Then there's Danny's story of how he found it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Denver. This has been awesome.
It's been great.
Yeah, let me go stand in the corner over there. We'll find somebody to raid here real quick, and we'll end the stream and be back streaming tomorrow. So don't miss it. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks again, Denver.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Wow, very cool. What a treat! Holy cow! One of the, I don't know, not a huge museum, but like I said, punches well above its weight. This is one of the most exciting museums, honestly, in the world right now. They're building a tremendous program here and growing at a pretty impressive rate. This is, this is a new hotbed of paleobiology. That's exciting. Anywho, let me see who else is on Twitch right now, and we'll see about doing a raid here so we can maybe even. Yeah, we're gonna go raid science streams, and go continue some science. So let me open up the chat there. My channel chat and / raid science _ streams. Beautiful. Well. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. Thank you for your questions and your attention and your enthusiasm, and hopefully maybe your merchandise purchases and donations. It's all really important. It's part of what helps science thrive here. So, yeah. Let's see. that. Looks like we're about ready to raid. We're going to go raid into Cyanat streams. We're going to go hang out with a molecular and systems biologist, hang out with Balint, and do some more science here on Twitch. Thank you again, everybody. Can't wait to see you tomorrow for another exciting stream here at the museum. And I'll see you around. Bye-bye.